Hi guys, we're now live. Welcome back to the final of the Red Dwarf reviews with myself and Sadako doing The Last Human by Doug Naylor.
Greetings, Smegheads.
Hi guys. First of all, thank you very much for everyone who's subbed. I've reached 100. Thank you. And next week will be my 100th stream. And I'll be doing a review of the Talons of Wenchang, and there will be a wee giveaway at that stream. So join me next week, but that's next week. Before we go any further, we're going to talk about The Last Human, the book.
Not Lister.
Yes. It's basically a Lister-centric book, very Lister-centric. I was a wee bit disappointed because there was no Holly.
Well, he's in the still in the other universe, isn't he?
Yes, but it's just one of those things. For a book, you think they would have actually been able to add them in because they were dimension hopping, as it were. But there is bits about this book that touch on the previous book we talked about backwards. Obviously, the two of them were written by the two guys separately.
Yeah,
as so follow on from it wasn't Infinity.
Better Than Life.
Better Than Life, yes. So you can see the two of them they must have had some talk, but they changed bits and pieces that sort of crossed over.
Well, no, because they basically both Last Human and Backwards are completely different follow-ons from one book.
Yes, they are, but I think there was certain mentions of backwards. It looks like they may have had a wee bit of a discussion about what the books were going to cover.
Right.
That's just the impression I got, but that's just, as I said, it's the impression I got when I was going through this book, that there seemed to have been, he either read the book or they discussed it. That's the way I felt. And he still went his own way, but I felt as if there was just a wee bit there that looks like he either read the book or they had a wee discussion about what their books were going to do. Because this was the final book written. It was written after Backwards.
No, it's been written before.
Published. Was it published before?
It was, yeah. Because it says here, the acknowledgements. Because I remember this came out first. I remember.
It's because I read this last. I think I've got that mixed up.
Yeah. So basically he says, as many of you know, the previous two Red Dwarf novels were written in collaboration with Rob Grant. In the summer of 1993, Rob expressed his desire to write a Red Dwarf novel of his own. I look forward to reading it and thank him for the sections in this book that are based on the TV scripts we wrote together. So it sounds like they parted ways, really, and they were all going to do their different things with the books.
Yes.
And by the way, did you read the book or listen to it this time?
I listened to the book. That's what we're going to discuss, because after last week's review, we found out that the Backwards and The Last Human aren't necessarily, the audiobooks aren't unabridged.
Right.
There was Backwards, there was the whole Gunmen of the Apocalypse section missed out from the audiobook. So I would like to see where the difference is between the audiobook and the hard copy.
Right. Just to be clear, there was because with the first two books, there was an unabridged version that there was like a whole cassette of 6 tapes that Chris Barry read for both of them, and there was an abridged version that was just 2 tapes. Now, for the first Infinity Welcomes Careful Drivers, they cut out the Future Echoes segment and the Me Too segment. And for Better Than Life, they cut out the entire polymorph section. So basically, in that version, Lister it's implied that Lister has a heart attack whilst he's eating that chamois kebab when he gets back on Red Dwarf.
Yeah. See, the ones I've got for the first two where it seemed the complete unabridged version. I think I had the ones I had. I'm saying I remember having them on tape, and it definitely wasn't the 2 tape. I did have the 2 tape one for Infinity, but I had the 6. But I had the 4 books, and I can't remember any difference in what I listened to and what I read at the time.
Yeah. So it sounds like, I think for marketability reasons, they only released abridged versions of the Backwards and Last Human.
Yes, I think so, and it's a shame as well because I think the Gunmen of the Apocalypse section, the TV show part of it, I remember, and it's obviously one of my favourites from the Red Dwarf run, and I remember reading it at the time, and I quite enjoyed it. This one I can't remember because I've only read this rather than listen to it prior to listening to it for the review. I only read it once. And the thing is, I remember really enjoying it the very first time I read it. So I was looking forward to it again. However, I think I've become more of a cynic in my old age, and I found it a lot darker than I remembered.
It is very dark. I mean, I remember it being quite that stuck out to me at the time because I remember I remember when I was 13 that I read this and I was disappointed because I remember I read it and then my dad asked me because he knew I'd kind of had it on mind to get the book because I think back then you have to ask your parents to give you money to get something, and so I really, really want this, and I got it, read it, and my dad said to me, "What was it like?" And I said, "It was all right." And I think it was like, "Well, was it just all right?" And I think he knew I was a bit disappointed.
Yeah. See, I remember reading it and I enjoyed it. I loved the expansion on the Guelphs. That was the part I remembered from reading this. Obviously, the other parts, the nihilistic parts, or don't want to go too much away ahead of it, but I did think I completely forgot about how dark it was because it's the Guelph parts I remembered from all those years ago. Because I did read it a good time ago. Not telling you what age I was, but I wasn't a spring chicken.
You weren't 13 like I was.
No. I was definitely mid-20s when I read it. So, yeah, I'm a wee bit. Yeah.
I mean, I will say that maybe the second time reading it now, I think maybe I appreciate it a bit better, and maybe I'd reconsider some of my judgment at the time. But I still think, well, we'll get into it basically.
Yeah. But see, I think I'm the same. I've reevaluated how I first remember it.
Well, when you first read it, what was it that impressed you the most about it? Would you say?
The expansion on the Guelphs. That was the part that actually stuck with me because I obviously liked reading. Because obviously in the TV show, there's the Guelphs here and there.
Yeah.
And you know what they are. They talk about different type of Guelphs. Although the Guelphs you obviously see always look the same, although they're meant to be different tribes of Guelphs. However, this one it expanded more on the Guelphs, the different types, the descriptions of them, made them a bit more fleshed out, and that's what I liked. And I think it's just a case of I'd completely forgotten the other aspects of it, and I think being a bit more jaded now, and I think the problem is after enjoying the TV show, it's changed how I look at the book.
You mean because now this is interesting because this was written before Series 7, but it prefigures quite a few things. The first, of course, is the Kachansky's part of the crew, and we kind of, in some way, say goodbye to Rimmer. But
we sort of say goodbye to an Ace version, shall we say?
Yeah.
So I see the TV shows or the TV episodes I saw in this were obviously DNA, Polymorph, the Polymorph 2, Emohawk Polymorph 2. And so it was Emohawk, DNA, the one with, I'm trying to think what one it was with Ace in it. This one sort of reminded me of. I think it's actually more like it's not actually got Ace in it. Let's go ahead with that. But the way Rimmer acts It's almost like the when he becomes Ace, I suppose, is the best way to describe it.
Well, the bit you're talking about is a bit reminiscent of it's almost a kind of prelude to what we get in the Promised Land, isn't it?
Yes,
that's kind of what it's more like.
I suppose so. Yes, it had that vibe about it, and watching the Promised Land, obviously. But I remember watching this first 7 seasons prior to reading the book. I think it was may have actually been after I'd read the 8th season, or watched the 8th season before the big long break, and that's why I went to the books, because of the break they were having. And I think I'd enjoyed the TV show, and this was just an expansion of the TV show. That's why I enjoyed it.
Well, Wendology just put a famous quote in there.
Yes.
Although Ace isn't in the book, that quote is in the book somehow.
That quote is definitely in it.
Yeah.
SMEKIBBFB is also in it. Basically.
Can you say it in Morse code?
No, I can't. I'm not that good.
Okay.
I get lost after the first dot.
Me too.
or actually after the third dot, because it's dot s.
Mm-hmm.
But it I suppose that's why we were thinking Ace, because of the saying rather than Ace being mentioned, as it were.
Yeah,
it was the saying that actually brings the Ace to our minds. But anyway, I watched this in between after 8. So although I enjoyed the TV show, at the time I didn't have a recorder or anything like that. I didn't have it all recorded, and I was only starting to get videos of it.
Right.
So I had a love for the show. That's why I started reading the books when they had the break. And then obviously later on, when I managed to get the DVDs, or actually got more videos, then I got on to collect DVDs and rewatched it multiple times, because it was always on the TV somewhere.
Well, yeah, because I mean, these two books did fill the void when Red Dwarf was on hiatus from series 6 to 7. Like, this was kind of, in a way, this was almost like this was a glimpse of what the series 7 might be like. And same way, the back was kind of a glimpse of, well, back was just a wrap up of how Rob Grant wanted to end the story, I suppose.
Yes, and you could see that's what it was. They were looking at within bits of the actual show. But I think you can see bits in here where the way Doug would have liked to have done that as well.
Yeah.
But see, after reading backwards and Last Human, I can see where some of the darker storylines in the TV show came from. I would say came more from Doug rather than Rob, whereas Rob, I think, has got a more humorous take on things.
Well, they're both dark, but like Rob tends to color it with humor, and Doug tends to he maybe finds some of the humor in there, but he'll kind of ponder it, and sometimes that's what makes it kind of a bit. Because I always feel like with Doug's TV stuff that he was kind of, he'd have this idea of a kind of a poignant idea he wanted to go for, and sometimes he'd strain a bit to get there, but he'd get there. But it was like you'd have the poignant moments, the serious moments and the comedic moments, and it was like, well, you'd have in isolation the poignant stuff and the comedy would be great, would be good, but like as they wouldn't quite weave together. If you know what I mean?
Yes, I do. Actually,
you'd feel like there was kind of there were several things Red Dwarf was being, and they were kind of both veering in separate ways almost within the same episode.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. It's just that when I was reading, I've obviously read both of them, that just with the way they've written their books, I felt as if you could see where each of them would drive the story if they didn't have the checks. I could see Rob's being a bit more comical, whereas I could see Doug's being a bit more serious. And I think the two of them together just had that right balance where they could work it in such a way that it did walk that tightrope where it sat in between both.
Yeah.
Whereas after reading the two books, you can see what way one's going, because the descriptions in backwards, they were just hilarious about how things, when they was describing it all running backwards,
Yeah.
it was very humorous. Whereas this one, it's a lot darker, and that's what I'm saying. You could see the two of them where they would split off if they had the reins, whereas the two other sort of
actually, can I put this to you? Is it that it's a dark book throughout, or does it feel like it's quite light, but then it takes a very dark turn toward the end? That's just
no. I think it feels dark throughout to me, dark with humor rather than actually humorous, which takes dark turns.
Right.
Just even the descriptions of when they find the other crew.
Let's shall we start from the beginning then?
Yes, let's go back to the beginning.
Right. So the backstory of Better Than Life, as we know, was old Lister had a heart attack, and Holly decided to save him by sending his body into this black hole that had kind of this within it was a kind of a kind of intersection of parallel universes,
Yeah.
and one of them was, of course, the universe where time runs backwards.
Yes, and in this book they make it very distinctive that they sent Chrissy back with him.
Yeah.
Unlike the last book, it was just sort of left a bit ambiguous. Did he? Didn't he? Was she? Because in backwards, it was implied that she was naturally there because she was a person of that world, whereas he was a person not of that world, and the way he saw things was not the way she saw things. So it left it more ambiguous. This one, they state that she was sent back with him,
and they grew young together and had several children.
Yes, and then they came back because it states they actually talk about the Niagara Falls.
Yeah, just to be clear, that basically that entire life is skipped. It's basically the story starts right in, because basically they make the trip out of backwards universe and they end up in the wrong universe.
Yes, so it basically, as you said, it starts right after it.
Yeah, all the action in the book takes place in this universe, this parallel universe that they've not worked. It's where Lister wakes up. It's where we follow another Lister from that universe who's facing a prison sentence.
Yeah,
because basically he's been captured by this huge Guelph law enforcement. Like, because there's this period of it's Guelph territory he's in, and there's various traders there, and he's been implicated of various crimes, and he's been sent to a punishment dome.
Yeah, it's future crimes.
Yeah,
very Minority Report.
Yes, yeah.
So yeah, and it starts with, it even gives you the description of
the court case. Well,
the court case, yes. How could he justify how Crichton tried to understand why the court works, and there basically says, well, surely you would let him commit the crime first. He says, so you're telling us we need to let him kill somebody or kill me, the person who was prosecuting it. So you need to let him kill me just so to prove that he actually committed the crime. This way, we stop the crime being committed. So, yes, it was very Minority Report, and I'm wondering when the Minority Report was out. I bet then again it's based on a novel. Aye. Yeah. So I think they've taken a wee bit from that. The homage to Philip K. Dick.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, it makes a certain sense, because I mean, Red Dwarf has delved into time travel and predictive software, predictive computers. So,
yes.
But the idea, of course, is if you do that, then you can allow people to just point the finger at anyone and say, well, it was predicted by someone. And it doesn't necessarily have to be predicted. You just have to say, it says that you've been predicted as being done to do this.
Yeah.
Because basically, when it comes to basically, I mean, the way our lister gets involved is he's awoken from deep sleep and he's still kind of trying to
understand what's happening.
Yeah, because basically he's lived on backwards world so long that the first thing he does is he goes to an empty glass and he tries to regurgitate water and he realizes, oh wait, I'm in the. And it takes a while to clock on that he's in the universe and in our universe.
Yeah, and in this one he isn't a kid. He didn't have to stay on backwards Earth for the extra 10 years. He basically is his natural age.
Yeah, well, in backwards, basically, they cocked up they cocked up the rendezvous, so they missed him, and then they missed the flight window, so they had to stay an extra 10 years. And in this version, it's implied they met him, they met Kachansky as well. They both stayed together, and basically they made the trip hassle free because like it isn't even. We don't even see it. It's just alluded
to. It starts off after it. So they're at their normal age as they were in the TV show. And the two of them are together from the very beginning. Mm-hmm. And it is mentioned that when they met at Niagara Falls, so Kachansky mentions that. So it's not as if it's just he convinced her to come with him. It's a case of it implied. It basically states that they were sent there together.
Mm-hmm. And by the way, the first time he meets Kachansky, he's still kind of recovering his memory, and she's trying to remind him. So she kind of strips, and it was like I was 13 when I read that first. I thought, wow, I'd never read erotic literature before. I've watched nudie shots. I've watched nudie shots in horror films, and this is the first time I'd actually read it in book form. Oh my god!
I know. Well, it's definitely all I can say is Jenny Agutter in Walkabout. Sorry. Yeah, but and it does feel like just even they played with that, just the humor of that as well, getting her name wrong, and just the slap, and just basically it sort of played in the fact that the two of them have been together a lifetime, so they can mess around.
Yeah, because in this is not the Kachansky of Series 7. This feels a lot more like Claire Grogan's Kachansky and Kachansky and Lister are kind of together. I mean, like I think on TV they had to kind of have that iciness because if they got back together, it would kind of there'd be no anticipation of will they won't they get back together?
Yes,
whereas in the book they just kind of went straight to
Whereas I think in the TV show, because they had to have a different actress play it, it would have been, and it's meant to be from an alternate dimension. It had to be like that as well, because it couldn't have just fallen in because of the time difference between when the crew died and when he first sees Kachansky again.
Well,
so I think they had to do that as well, because if it was Claire Grogan playing the part again, then taking it off, if they decided to go down the route that it sort of they took off from where it was, because it was the same actress, it would have been more accepted. I'm not saying it would have worked any better. I'm just saying it would have been a bit more accepted. I think they had to do it this way because I think they thought people just wouldn't accept, because it's two different actresses playing the part, that they're meant to be the exact same one, although they both are Kachansky.
Well, the other thing is, of course, that in Series 7, that Kachansky, she was still attached to the Lister from her universe, so she couldn't cheat on him. She was still longing for the Lister she knew.
Yeah. Yes. But that's what I'm saying. It's just that I think, as on hindsight, I think when they were casting it, would they or won't they decide to go down that route? I think they decided that because it was a different Kachansky, and they had to write it from an alternate reality, that they had to do it with the build-up and the will they won't they again, rather than actually the two of them being more familiar with each other.
You know what else I found quite refreshing, though? There was no jealousy from Crichton in the book.
Well, yes, I did like that aspect of it. It was just a case of she's always been there, so it wasn't. He see, there's bits in Crichton in this book I dislike, but unfortunately, it's the same parts I dislike in the TV episode.
Okay.
So there is parts when we come to it. It was ones I found silly, stupid, and illogical in the TV episode, and I found them just as annoying and illogical in the book, which is funnier, I think, because it's a bit more detailed.
All right.
And they could have actually get round, try to explain it a bit better because you're doing it in a book rather than a quick episode.
Well, see, I didn't feel that at all. I actually felt like it was a nice reminder of the old Crichton, because I feel like Series 7, when he had that jealous turn, that was a change too far for me. And I thought he's not like the old Crichton anymore. And reading the book, he does feel like the old Crichton, and it feels like that's how he should have acted. That's how he he should have acted kind of like, Kachansky is just part of the crew. Kind of thing.
Yes, but the part that they do Crichton that it annoys me is a pre-Kachansky Crichton on the Dwarf.
Okay, right.
Let's put it this way: it's the DNA sequence.
Okay, all right.
It's that because obviously we had said that DNA was part of this book, and it's that part which was prior to Kachansky joining the DNA episode. So yes, it's the old Crichton. It's just the part with the DNA machine. I just found in the TV show, I found it ridiculous and illogical, and in this, I found it just as bad. Whereas the book, I would have expected it to be explained a bit better, but it didn't. It was almost beat for beat, and it just made because it's a book more annoying because they had the time to explore it more, whereas they didn't seem to explore it more. They just Doug just basically seemed to regurgitate the same part, and it was the same part that annoyed me, unfortunately.
I should also say, I think maybe another reason why maybe they could, I think why they did the jealousy thing in the TV show is because Rimmer was gone. Whereas I think
so. They had to have someone who was a baddie or a spanner in the works.
Because, like in the book, like Kachansky and Rimmer have to work together, and that's where you see there is a bit of tension there. And it's a natural tension because Rimmer's now suddenly got Kachansky as his superior, and he doesn't like the fact that he's no longer in charge, and he doesn't like the fact that it's just a further undermining of him. It's like he could cling on to his superior rank before her, and so I think that worked. And of course, obviously, the fact that she's so in with Lister makes him feel like he's being ganged up on.
Yeah.
So that worked, and it's like if they'd done that on TV, that would have worked. Her and Kachansky at each other's necks didn't work for me.
Aye, I must admit, it was another annoying aspect of it, but it was annoying within the story rather than actually Crichton being specifically annoying. Because even with the Kachansky, the silly things she would do, and it would annoy him. That it just seemed to be. The four of them are actually living in a small area in either on the ship. It's no as if they don't see each other for weeks or whatever. They see each other every day. They would know what annoys each other because they're only the four of them. It's no as if they meet other people, and that's the things I found. It was just a case of it was there just to cause the conflict, and it just didn't make sense with the salad cream in the fridge or not, and it's hold me back, and all that, and her constantly saying, "Why is this in the cupboard? I keep putting it," and it's almost a case of it's the two of them did the explanation of that a wee bit too much in an episode, and it just seemed they only did that was to show how different they were.
Well, it was like they milked it to the point it just got petty.
Yes, and that's exactly what it is, and it just seemed to be just to drive the plot rather than actually changing the character to match it. So it was the Crichton being petty or Kachansky being petty. It was just the storyline made it petty.
Just to be clear, we're talking about the TV show, not
at this point. Yes,
we're not talking about the novel. Not the novel. That stuff's not in the novel.
No,
which is good. Which is a plus.
Yes, it is. It's basically the Kachansky in this one is just part and parcel of the crew.
Right. By the way, Wendology's got a point about Rimmer. All I'll say is Cat would be getting out his permanent marker.
Yes. Yes, I had definitely. They basically try to get the hard drive to actually download it all, fire it into space. But yes, whereas in this book, there isn't that resentment. There is a bit. You can't deny there's a wee bit of resentment from Rimmer, but it doesn't go to the extreme.
Yeah. So basically, the point is they've awoken and they've realized that they haven't made the journey back to their own universe. They were supposed to head back. They were supposed to get back to back to Holly, but they haven't. They've landed in the wrong dimension. And the first point where we realize that they're in the wrong dimension is when they come across another starbug.
Yes. And in the other starbug, they find bodies.
Yes.
And I think this is one of the parts it felt like Angels and Demons to a wee bit, as if they'd taken parts of that.
Mm-hmm.
So they did, but they find the body, or the headless body of the cat.
Yeah.
The mangled remains of Crichton.
Yeah.
And in a stasis, they find...
They also find this Rimmer's light beast.
Light beast. And in the stasis pod, they find a wounded Kachansky.
Yeah.
Who is in the point of dying.
And it's
even in the book, she died off screen. Which I thought was really, because it basically, after they revive her and they try and help her and they sort of stabilize her, the next thing you hear is Crichton coming in and says, yes, she died. So I thought, even in a book, she died off screen. It's the type of thing they would do in the show. Yeah, in the book, it seemed to be that way rather than actually, because you can imagine Lister would have actually been at her side the whole time, but she died off screen, even though it wasn't his Kachansky. Because the way he felt about Kachansky, somebody who was an alternate version of his Kachansky, he would have felt as bad. So he would have been there, or else Kachansky would have been there. But it was the fact is none of the two of them were there, and it was Crichton, and she passed away off screen. It just seemed a wee bit silly. That's what I meant about that aspect of it.
Well, I mean, it was kind of, in a way, it was poignant because you're kind of thinking she's survived that long. You thought maybe she was gonna make it, and then when she dies, it's almost like it gives Lister this conflict. Is this gonna resolve his determination to find his other self? Is he gonna say, you know what? I'd rather his other self didn't even know. I'd rather let's just leave. It's nothing to do with us. And it's his Kachansky who basically kind of persuades him.
Yes,
we got to break him out. We got to find him, and because he's the only one who's left, and we got to.
Yes, but that's what I'm saying. To me, it would have actually been a bit stronger. His feelings about it, as if he had been the one at her side when she passed away. Because he would have actually felt it, because he would have realised if it was his Kachansky, how he would have felt, rather than just Crichton telling her, oh, she passed away, but he's sitting next to Kachansky when he said that. So it's not got the same impact, I think, as him being with her, because she's a variation of his Kachansky, and he sat and watched her. He was helpless, and she died, and he knew how it would have felt if it was his Kachansky. So I'm saying the book, if they'd gone down that route, it would have been a bit more emotionally turmoil, rather than him. Kachansky just convinced them to do it, rather than him just saying. If the book had gone into it, because it's a book you can expand on wee bits like that. That's what I'm saying. It would have been nice to expand on it, to give him a bit more in-depth feeling about why he was doing it, rather than Kachansky just convinced him to do it because he said, well, if it was my Kachansky, I would have been really sad, and I don't want to put him through it.
Because, the thing is, when they find and they're about to recover, there is a tension there. Is she going to live? Is she going to die? And, it's kind of, there's a poignance, because in knowing she's going to die, that gives her a certain poignance of, well, this is the last chance, last contact they have with her. I mean, so I think either maybe you're right that it should have been Lister, or maybe Kachansky could have stayed with her other self, and that she could have been the one who was there to the end. Yes,
based on the characters as they were described up until this point, to me, it would have been either one of those two, because it would have been Kachansky, because she wouldn't want to die surrounded by people she didn't really know, even though they looked like it. So she would have wanted to be there to help her or ease her. Or it would have been Lister, for the simple fact is he couldn't put his head around not being with her if it was his Kachansky. So because she looks and she acts and she talks and everything, it's his Kachansky, just an alternate version, he would have still been there. It would have just gained a bit more emotional impact, I think. Whereas the book just seemed to skip over it a wee bit because with him crying, coming in and saying, "Oh, she passed away."
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying. It just, with a book, you could expand it a wee bit, where it just seemed to be, there was less of an emotional impact with her dying off screen and Craig just delivering the news.
Well, do you know what else there was? The fact, in terms of talking, quite a lot of stuff in the book happens off screen, because like Rimmer he's hard light now.
Yes.
So, like there's this kind of backstory.
They mention it, but that's it.
Exactly. It's like it feels like you could have told an interesting story of how he became hard light over the course of the story, to explain how he got from how we knew him in Better Than Life to where he is here. But it just feels like.
And you know what I liked as well? They had aspects of Legion in this. Just wee bits here and there, like the hard light hologram. They mention a Gestalt entity later on. It's completely different, but it's almost like he's taking wee teeny bits from that story and just fitted it into his story.
Yeah.
Like Rimmer being hard light now, and they just describe where they found the hard light be, as it were.
Yeah.
And even talk about the struggle to actually make it work. And it being, as you said, with it being done off screen, there wasn't any impact on it. So it's a case of, well, he's already hard light. So the fact it was talking about the struggle with it, well, it worked. So there's no struggle. Whereas if they had shown them trying to do it and glitching out and bits like that and silly bits happening, there would have been a more emotional impact on it, rather than him just saying, "Oh, we had problems," and it would glitch out. And well, you knew it worked because you are a hard light. It's like a prequel of something you already know.
Well, because you think, for Rimmer, like being hard light, as Rimmer in the book, being hard light would be a big moment because he'd be kind of close to human again.
Aye, bring Rachel and the puncture repair kit.
Yeah, but again, that's skipped. That could have been a moment for him. But I think, I mean, basically, if I was to sum up the book overall, but this is a kind of that kind of typifies it, it's a bit on the patchy side.
Yeah, yes, I think so. There's bits missing that I think would have made it a bit more emotional or a bit more engaging. The book felt to me like the TV show, a load of sketches just put together to sort of make a cohesive story, because they sort of jumped between bits, and it could be a completely different story. It's just there's a wee link to the previous bit, but there's no. It's a cutscene. It's a case of going from one to the other, and they just sort of mention how it's linked to it. Right. I did feel that as well. Yes.
Well, I'm gonna. Without giving away a spoiler, I think part of the problem is it tries to glue that all around this arch villain that I don't think really works.
I quite agree. The arch villain I thought was the worst part of it.
Yeah.
Yes, the villain was not my favourite, shall we say.
Yeah.
Probably be nice, considering we know what the villain does.
Yeah.
So, but they cut streets with Kachansky dying, and it sort of jumped that bit. It sort of lost me a wee bit because it didn't have the same impact, just because it was mentioned and then they discussed, and then the convincing to go and look for.
Actually, I've got a suggestion. Do you think they should have left her in stasis, and maybe they could have would give certain ticking clock to what they're doing?
Yes, I actually think that's exactly what I thought. Why did they take her out of stasis? If they, I could understand taking her out of stasis, try to help her, but once they realise that they've done what they can, but it's still touch and go. Put her back in stasis.
Well, the point. Well, okay. The point is she could. The problem is the stasis that on
the stasis on the ship is not the stasis as on Red Dwarf. The stasis on the ship just cuts down the timing by, was it 90-95%?
Yeah, so basically she's still dying while she's there, but there was the hope that if they could operate quickly, then maybe maybe they could save her.
Yeah.
While she was kind of still had that time before flatlining, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, but I still thought it would have actually, instead of her actually lasting a day, even if it cut it down, it would have given them a week to try and find something.
Yeah.
Or at least find her Lister to allow him to say goodbye. It would have, as you said, it would have given a time limit rather than it just sort of, she died and now we need to go and find him, and does it matter how long it takes? It's time frames don't mean anything now.
Yeah.
But I quite agree with that. I thought at the time, why didn't they put her back into stasis? It would have at least allowed them to hunt for a ship or something with either a better stasis pod or
better medical
better medications. Yeah, they never knew what they could have found, but they didn't even try. They just sort of we slapdashed it together just to see what we could do, because they actually mention about how they prepared one of the things. And I thought, in effect, you'd already said you didn't have a lot of supplies to do it, but you still try to do your best with it. But took her out, and even though you couldn't repair her, you still let her die rather than putting her back and try and find something that could help. It just seemed as if that, yes, a time limit on the whole story would have given it a bit more gravitas.
Yeah. So the next bit, of course, is when they actually start doing some investigation to find out what happened to Lister.
Yes.
So they go into Guelph territory, and they have to, first of all, because basically it happens by chance. They're walking through the market stalls, and then Lister
well, before we go to the market stalls, they find out that they're rich on this Guelph planet, because the currency of choice on this Guelph planet is sperm.
Yeah.
And so they find out they can buy what they need or get what they want because they've got plenty supply.
Yeah.
And then when they're walking through the market, that's when they see someone who is shocked to see Lister.
And Lister knows that's because that guy recognizes his other self and does a runner.
Mm-hmm.
So that gives Lister a clue. Okay, well, we got to find out from him who his other self was, where he went, and all that.
Yeah, and it was the cat that actually went and got him. Which, considering the cat's in it, he's not really in it that much.
No.
There's very little mention of the cat. There's only mention, I think it was about 3 or 4 times in the whole book that the cat was mentioned.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Which it's a similar idea to Rimmer. Rimmer wasn't mentioned a lot, but the Batsy was at least mentioned and he was in. Whereas this one, it's almost like, I think there was only one scene in the book that the cat actually had airtime, shall we say, however you could describe it in the book. It had a few pages dedicated to his part of the story. However,
he didn't come off.
It was almost a case of, he was just an afterthought. They would need something. Oh, we'll do the cat to do it, and then he's forgot about it the rest of the time.
He doesn't come off the page, you mean?
Yes, exactly. It's just, it could have been any character doing it. Just seemed to be, they mentioned the cat because they hadn't actually used the cat for anything else.
Yeah.
Whereas at least Rimmer did get that when throughout the story. He's not in it as much as Kachansky or Lister. However, he does get his moments.
Yeah. So then they make it. So what happened? Then
they find out that the guy had ratted him out to the Guelph, and he was actually in prison on Siberia, a prison planet.
Yeah. And then Crichton meets with the because Crichton's very good at speaking the language, isn't he?
Yes. It's because was it? These are was it the baboon ones?
Oh, there's various of them, isn't there? There's like these.
Yes, there's the baboon ones that because the most of them are actually infertile. The ones of higher status walk about with their genitals uncovered. Everything else is covered.
Yeah.
To show their status because they are the fertile ones. But every time it's almost like a call to copulate. So every time there's a horn, everybody pairs off and goes about it. And as soon as the second horn goes, they finish and just go on their merry way as if nothing had happened.
Yeah.
So that's why the cat and Lister are rich on this planet.
Yes. Yeah.
So, but Crichton's does the negotiation, and this is where
he doesn't so much negotiate as he finds the truth about what happened to Lister.
Yeah,
and why he was sentenced, and it was to do with something about future crimes against the Guelph people.
Yes, it was actually the person in particular, the leader. It was him that they thought he was going to kill.
Yeah,
and so they obviously imprisoned him for a future crime. So he doesn't get killed because that's when Crichton actually tried to say, well, surely you can't actually try someone if they've not committed a crime. And he says effectively, well, so you're basically saying I should let him kill me before we actually catch him.
Mm-hmm.
That's where Crichton basically goes, yeah, that's true. If you know he's going to commit the crime, why not deal with it beforehand? That way the crime doesn't get committed. That means somebody doesn't die just to prove somebody's guilty.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which I must admit, the way it was done in the book, you can understand both sides. One, why would you convict someone who hadn't committed a crime? And then the other side is, why would you wait until that crime is committed before you actually catch them? So let somebody turn around saying, I'm going to kill that person over there. And you tell the police, and the police say, well, we can't do anything until he's killed him.
Yeah.
They already know he's planning to do it. There's a good chance he'll try it, but they'll have to just sit and wait to see if he does it before they do anything about it, which means that the person he says he's going to kill is either going to be dead, injured, or whatever, before the guy gets jailed for a crime that could have been stopped if he was arrested before. So the book sort of gives it both sides so you can understand both sides of it, which I thought that was quite good, because most of them it's a case of this is just backwards, it doesn't work. And then the other one, when they're explaining it, so effectively I have to die just to prove that he's guilty. That's crazy. So I like that part of the book, I must admit.
Yeah. So then they meet with a different tribe of Guelph, don't they?
Yes, they meet with the Kinikitawawi.
Is it the Kintawawi?
It is. It's the ones from Emohawk.
Yeah.
And Wendy, you probably wouldn't, because the way the characters are written in the TV show are different, and there's certain aspects of them that are great, they expand on, but there's other aspects it's a bit darker.
Yeah, because basically they're there to trade for some combat droids, because
combat droids, and help to break Lister out of prison.
Yeah, because they know where he's in prison. They have this plan to break him out, and basically they get this this Oblivion virus, which is going to shut down the base's electricity, and 12 droids that are basically combat ready and basically will
falling apart as well. One's no head, one's got no legs, one's got no arm. There's a couple with different arms missing. One's got a hole in his chest. So yes, they're not the greatest, but they all work. But when they try and pay, Lister tries to pay in sperm with a load of girls which are highly fertile. So they don't have the money. They thought they had to buy it all. So they broker a deal that Lister has to marry the chief's daughter. So basically now we're on the TV episode Emo Hawk.
Yeah.
However, unlike the TV episode,
there's a bit of bonking.
There's a bit of bonking, and it's Lister is, I wouldn't say he's Mickey Finn because it was his idea. He try and get his bride drunk so she wouldn't feel it. But considering it's Gelf Hooch, he took a wee sip of it and blacked out and woke up with his beautiful bride performing on top of him. So basically, yes, and it goes into a bit more detail that you definitely wouldn't want on the TV show.
Yeah, it was kind of, yeah.
So in effect, you can imagine instead of the part where Lister's running out saying, "Change your plan, guys, leg it," while he's shoving on his hat, this one he has Lister shouting, "Change your plan, guys, leg it," when he's stark bollock naked.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of it's still kept the right side of funny, isn't it?
It is to the extent, yes, but it's the same again. It goes a wee bit OTT because
I think that kind of works though. That kind of feels Red Dwarf.
See, I was the opposite because I thought it took the humour away.
Oh, I didn't.
From it. See, I did because yes, the part where he tries to get her drunk, and even the description where she's taking off her lovely wedding dress and she's wearing her especially nice underwear and stuff like that. Yes, I could see the humour part in that. But as soon as he tries to get her drunk and he's the one that ends up with the Mickey Finn, I think it would have been better if they finished it and not explained what happened afterwards. That's the part I didn't find humorous at all. And I know it sounds silly, but it's just because finishing it and having sort of putting that in your mind is funnier because you don't need to describe it. Your mind can actually make things worse or more humorous. So he could have woke up with no trousers on and her lying sleeping, and you would know what would have happened, and it would have been funny because he's the one that tried to Mickey Finn her, ended up Mickey Finning himself. Do you see what I mean? How the lack of the description would have made it funnier because your mind sort of fills all those gaps. But it's the fact of the description part. I thought it took the humour out of it.
I'm the opposite. I feel like it would have been an uncomfortable ambiguity. Whereas I think in this, I don't know. I thought it was. I mean, for me, I thought it was kind of comical. Even when the way it was described, I thought it was kind of comical.
Yeah, I think if I had, I suppose if it's a case of with the books, if I was the one that was doing it, I would have left the imagery out and just left it. And that way you think about it because yes, it sort of leaves it up to your own mind what happened. And if you've already got a mind of what that character's like, you're playing into the definition of the character. Whereas this one, I think it sort of changed the definitions of the characters. So when it was going down a route, I felt they were taking that the humour wasn't as what it was expected, I suppose, is the easiest way, because we've been watching the TV shows and stuff like that. Yeah, I've got these characters in your mind, as Wendology said. You have got a scene, but if you, in the book, they describe something, you're seeing that character doing it, and it's a case of, no, and that's what I mean. It sort of takes me away from the character. Whereas if you leave it to the imagination, they can't say, all they can say is, that's you. It's put that in your own mind, not us. We've just left it opened. Because you think about it, different people have different weird, wonderful, and hilarious ideas of what happened. Mm-hmm. And the fact that you don't know, but you know he was the one that tried to give her a Mickey Finn so she would go to sleep. Whereas he ended up with a Mickey Finn and God knows what happened to him. That's where I think the humour would have been a bit funnier, because you don't need to know, because he doesn't know, but all he could do is guess. You don't know if she fell asleep as well as him. Maybe the two of them actually blacked out with the amount of hooch, but you don't know. And that's where the humour, I think, would be, is your idea of that character, what would have happened. because the last time he got that drunk, he ended up in Titan with a cone in his head with somebody else's ID.
Yeah.
So what would have happened if he was that drunk? Did the two of them did he actually participate in it? Because he's mentioned was it in the book? I mentioned here, and he also mentioned in the TV show when Rimmer says you've had worse. He says, "Aye, but it's usually dark light and a hell of a lot of it mentions the drink." Yeah. So you don't know if he wakes up and the two of them are lying sleeping. Did he participate because he was that drunk, or? You see what I mean? That's where the humor part comes in your head, because you don't know. You start wondering and making up. And that's what a good book should do. Should get you involved in the story rather than them telling you. And it's it takes you out of that part of the story, leaving that wee bit ambiguous. It won't make any difference, but it still makes it ambiguous that you could add to it. You see what I mean? That's the way I look at a book. A book should leave a bit of mystery, so you do something. It's an unimportant aspect, but because he could have woke up lying next to his bride, the two of them sleeping, and he's basically ass naked, and so is she. But he could hear her starting to stir again, and that's it. That's it, guys. Leg it, get out of here, and that's the type of thing. So you could have still had that scene, because he realizes he's now sober. He's aware of what's happening. So was he aware, and did he just join in because he was that drunk, or not? You see what I mean? It sort of changes the aspect of it, and it would have also given his girl bride more of a reason to come hunting for him.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? You understand where I'm going with the fact is, if you didn't show it, it could have left so much more in your mind. It's why is she hunting for him? Was it because he got that drunk he actually enjoyed himself?
Maybe, yeah, maybe.
I know it's just it's different interpretations of the book. It's just that's all it is, and that's the good thing about a book. The two of us have read the exact same stuff.
Well, we're not quite the exact same stuff because
they're not. But this part itself, obviously, there's parts in the book that are missing, but in the whole, there's going to be aspects of the book in the audible or the written is going to be the exact same. And this part is definitely, I think, is the exact same. It's just our interpretation of the parts we liked about it.
So then we come to probably what is my favorite part of the book, which is the prison break.
Yes, I would have liked to see something like this actually in the TV show. Was there not something? I'm trying to remember. There was something very similar. Oh, do you know what it was? It was the TV. It was the movie. There was a movie. Oh, what was the one? It was the one about. Was it Chris Pratt or I mean, he wakes up because his capsule opens and he eventually wakes up a woman that he fancied. It's and basically she's in swimming in the pool at one point and the gravity goes and Passengers, that's the one. That's what it reminded me of. The prison break part, because of that one scene with the water going up because of the lack of gravity or the reverse of gravity. I know it sounds silly, but that's what the scene reminded me of Passengers, that part of the water, because it was almost a description of he was floating up and the water was actually in the ceiling. So he basically couldn't stop himself. He couldn't swim because he was just floating up, passed through the water because it was stopped at the ceiling. Do you know what I mean? There's Darius back. Basically, he got in his first comment. I think it was about 4 days ago. Well, I know it wasn't that much. It was only yesterday, but he got his comment in as soon as the stream went up. I noticed it first. I thought sometimes the stream actually gets rid of your comments if they're actually up a couple of days beforehand. It's really weird.
PJ, you went mute.
Amma, can you hear me?
I can now, but you went mute for quite a few.
Weird.
For half a minute. I was just explaining. There was a so basically they do this two-pronged attack, don't they? Because
yes,
Crichton, Kachansky, and Cat have to install the Oblivion virus in one of the telegraph poles out on the periphery of the.
And the Oblivion virus effectively just cuts all electronic stuff, anything electronic.
I just realised it was a two-pronged attack because Lister has to do the parachute jump into the prison complex itself. He has to break the dome with the droids, of course. And
yes,
and he's like, well, okay, well, who can join me? Kachansky. She's Crichton and Kachansky. They're the techs, so they're the ones who have to handle the virus. And Cat has to fly Starbug, and Ross Rimmer's excuse and he says, "Oh, I'm allergic to parachutes."
Any excuse, but it's the same again. He didn't want, and he knew fine well that Kachansky was going to order him to do things anyway.
Yeah,
and I think that's what it was. If he had the option, he would have been the general, sitting back, sipping wine while other people are dying and fighting. He's not one for fighting. He's the hero that would sit back and actually organise it and let other people die. And he knows if she was a proper commander, she would just order him into the fray no matter what. But he knows she's not going to do that. She's just going to reason with him where he has to be the one to go. And it means that if he doesn't go, then it makes him look bad, and he doesn't want to look bad. So it's a sort of, if she ordered him to go, he would have more respect. But because she manipulates him into agreeing to go, he doesn't like it. By appealing to his better nature, which he knows he doesn't have.
Well, to a degree, she knows he's probably not got. If he's not got the guts for frontline fighting, then she knows he's probably no good as a soldier anyway. So I think,
but it's still the fact that she basically convinces him that it's the best thing to do, and because he can't give a reasonable excuse without actually turning around and saying, "No, I'm too scared." Which is typical Rimmer. He always wants to put out the fact that, no, I'm very brave just because I hide behind things. I'm a tabletop general. The generals don't fight battles. They let other people fight it. We just plan it. That's why I'm okay to hide, because I'm a tactician rather than a fighter. Yeah. But when she explains it to him, he can't get out of it, because it would just effectively mean he's turning around and saying, "No, I'm too scared," which he doesn't. So it's always appealing to his vanity, and he knows the only way out of it would be saying, "Sorry, I'm too scared to do." I like that aspect of it. She sort of manipulates him, and it's the fact that he dislikes her for the manipulation. He would have more respect if she ordered her into the front line to die, which is really weird.
Yeah. So they don't quite synchronize it right, because Kachansky's bunch get caught, but in the struggle, they do time the Oblivion virus to go off, and it does, so it allows them to make that two-pronged attack. I mean,
but it sort of screws it up, because they forget. Did they actually forget, or did they not know that?
I think they forgot. I think they forgot about the gravity.
The gravity, it had an artificial gravity, so as soon as the Oblivion virus hit it, it not only switched off all the security, it switched off the gravity, so everybody was floating away.
Yeah, so like Kachansky and Cat and Rimmer and Crichton have to cling to the telegraph poles, and Lister, he breaks into the dome, and a fight ensues, and then when gravity starts shifting, because basically all the inmates of the prison are basically locked into a basically a mental prison. It's like the better than life thing, except only it's the opposite. It's like
it's as the guy says, "Welcome to hell. If anything pleases you, please tell us so we can actually change it."
Yeah.
So, like for instance, the room that Lister gets in is basically it's filthy. It's got. But he says, "I've had worse," and that's when you get the comment from the commandant that we're here to actually make your life misery. Anything you find pleasing, please let us know, and we'll change that immediately. So it's basically a version of hell.
And basically, but there, it's within this lake. There's a whole lake of them, and everyone's kind of submerged for some reason. Like it's a there's a basically all the prisoners lie in this lake with the basically with their game sets on. So they're in this virtual reality world, and because they break the gravity, that means that the lake essentially floats up to the dome, and Lister starts to float up to it, and he starts to drown in it
because there's nowhere to go, because he can't bounce down to go up above the water or below the water level.
Yeah, and there's that great scene where he's kind of having that lateral thinking moment where he's trying to think, well, how do I get the oxygen? It's too high. And so his brain's like trying to think, how do I get more? Find another source of oxygen, and then he kind of figures it out. Break the roof, and the water flows out, and you can get the oxygen from outside.
Yeah, and which is because as soon as he breaks it, then the water goes out, and it also means that he starts getting dragged out as well.
Well, no, because he basically he makes it, doesn't he?
He does make it, but with his lateral thinking, because you think about it, he basically starts getting dragged because the bodies keep on flying past him.
Mm-hmm.
So in effect, the crew actually kill a lot of people.
Yeah, I do.
By mistake, but they kill a lot of people.
And
there's also, he does lose consciousness because although he thought he was going to succeed, it took too long and he blacked out.
Yeah.
But obviously he gets brought back around by his other self.
Yeah, indeed.
Because he says, his other self says, couldn't let somebody that good looking die.
Well, he wants to know why his other self's here as well.
Yes, that as well. But he basically used the excuse of couldn't let somebody that good looking die, which I think is a very Lister thing to say. Sort of playing on the fact that, yep, I'm gorgeous, look at me. But the silly play on the words because he could say it to himself, but if he said it to anybody else, he would have sort of felt embarrassed about it. But he could say it to himself because it's himself.
But then he kind of, during the course of the escape, he starts to realize that his other self is a bit of a loose cannon.
Yes.
Because first of all, they try to basically, first of all, the other Lister shoots one of the droids that he actually
coming to help him.
Yeah, and then he basically leads them out, but like he takes the wrong way, and they basically end up in the medicinal ward, just so the other Lister could get the
some alcohol. So medicinal alcohol, and he drinks two bottles of it?
I think so. And then when Lister challenges it, then Lister kind of has a short fuse moment and basically bangs his head against the wall and says, "Never tell me what to do," kind of thing.
Yeah, so but it's almost, he says he's used that as a distraction because there was two guards standing there, and to hit him over the head, he puts the laser cannon under his arm, facing away from his body, and he shoots the two guards.
The thing is, like, you're being confronted with this character through Lister's eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, you're the one who's going through what Lister's doing. You're the one who's nearly died to save this person. And then basically this person's endangering you and losing it with you and banging your head against the wall, saying you basically giving you the power pat.
Yeah, it is. That's when I suppose you start playing off the thing. That's when I started feeling that this is very angels and demons type of Lister.
A little bit, yeah.
Because he was a bit of a loose cannon, and he was quite happy. He was quite happy when he shot the two Guelph guards. He was quite pleased with himself.
Yeah. Well, the other thing, then they try to make it to the landing port, and then his other self starts acting really weird. And because there's a part where Lister, being kind of sanctimonious, is saying, "Well, I can't shoot because there's some approaching Guelph buggies and." Lister's got access to the buggy cannon, but he says, "Well, I can't shoot; they're not armed." And so his other self pulls over and says, "Excuse me, you guys not armed?" And he chucks them a load of harpoons and says, "Use them on us. Now they're armed. Shoot them." And It's just like, what the hell are you doing? And that's when Lister has to kind of get the drop on him and ties him up and says, okay, what the bloody hell was that about?
And he says it was basically just so it gave them an even chance. So he basically tried to justify himself by just saying, well, rather than actually allowing you to gun them down, they had to get a chance so that you felt okay gunning them down. It'd be like almost saying that we're going to get caught unless you kill them, but you don't want to kill them. Okay, we'll give you a justification to kill them, so here's their weapons.
Well, no, but I mean, he's being a liability on the battlefield, and that's what concerns Lister.
Yes.
He's like putting them all in needless danger, just for the hell of it.
Yeah, for the fun. For the fun.
Yeah, that's kind of
it's weird, and that's why I thought that's when I definitely went down the route that it was very Angels and Demons, because I suppose I could almost see the with the Lister from Angels and Demons, the wee laugh.
Let me do something like, he's a little part of you. He's a little boy that used to pull the legs off insects. He's a part of you that on a hot summer's day held a magnifying glass to his best friend's neck and watched him burn.
Yeah. And that made me laugh. That's the type of Lister I was picturing.
Now the last bit more like,
that's the one. That's the laugh. But yes, that's the. When you first meet the Lister, it doesn't feel that way. It just feels like it's just a wee bit weird.
Well,
being in prison, so this you could justify it with being in prison. I told myself this is the first thing I'm going to do if I get free. So he goes to get the alcohol. So is this rumor a bit of a drunk because he's here, that type of thing? And then it becomes a bit more Angels and Demons. And that's when, at this point, where he actually hands the guns and says, right, now shoot them. That's when I thought it was very Angels and Demons Lister.
Well, he's basically mocking his other self-sanctimoniousness, isn't he?
Yes, he is. He's basically turning it against himself. Oh, you don't want to actually kill them when they're unarmed? Well, let's make you kill them because I'm going to give them weapons. So if you don't kill them, they're going to kill you.
Well, I mean, the thing is, what was I going to say now? But it is a little bit Angels and Demons, but there's Demons and Angels. But it's more that they've had completely different upbringings, and it's left this Lister a bit of a unhinged mad dog. Like he's a bit of a like he's a bit more of a ruthless. Well, basically, he's like one of those chav kids you see on the street who's basically broken their leg or their arm in a fight, and they're still gunning to fight someone else because they just don't care. They're just and because that there's even a bit in that where, because like basically the way that his other self escapes the bonds is basically they've lit this fire because, like, you know, it's getting dark, so basically they're around this fire, and it's basically his other self actually goes into the fire just to burn the flames and burns his legs and feet to do it, because that's just how. You still there?
Yes, I'm listening.
But that's where you kind of get the sense there's something a bit unhinged about him. There's something a bit kind of he's not quite stable.
Yeah, it is. It basically just seems it definitely doesn't seem stable at all. It definitely. But I suppose that the reason, actually, I couldn't think of another one within the Red Dwarf universe that we've all seen that people can where people have got a point of reference.
Well, it's basically he's more kind of an anti-Ace Rimmer, isn't he? The Dark List is kind of an anti-Ace Rimmer. He's kind of who's had a different childhood, and his childhood made him, in some ways, buckle down and fight back, but in a very, very, very sociopathic way.
Yes.
And he was just completely out for himself, and he's just completely...
Yes, but it also gives you a wee bit of backstory on him, whereas he grew up and he was a sociopath.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that's what I'm saying. So the only reference we have from the TV show is the Angels and Demons one. Whereas obviously, like with Rimmer, you have got the Angels and Demons 2, you've got Ace. And with Crichton, you've got He Ain't Heavy, He's My Brother. You've got the wig and stuff like that. So you've got different variations of each of the characters. Whereas Rimmer or Lister, you've got the angel and the demon one, but there's not really any other ones within the show that actually you can actually say there's another version. Because even with when Kachansky came in, you only saw the Lister, not the Rimmer, the Lister over the chasm. So you didn't really get a lot. You didn't have any interaction to see what type of character he was. You get descriptions of him.
You kind of got enough with that list. You kind of got the sense that he was because he was just the way they left, the different ways they left into action is like he was a bit more. You could tell he was a bit more debonair, a bit more kind of mature, and like he was like it's the way he kind of moved to try and save. Because I mean, they both tried to save her, but they're like the way they went about it is like Lister seemed like the other Lister seemed like he knew what he was doing a bit more, like he was being the responsible one.
Yeah, and also the fact that the other two had to hold him back, or else he would have jumped in after her.
Yeah.
So he had a bit more maturity because he wanted to try and save her and he would do anything. Yeah. But that's what I'm saying. So, but you only got a wee snippet of that. And with the other characters, there's always different variations you can look at. Whereas with this one, you just had that. The only other variation I could even make him like is the demons one.
Yeah.
It's not as bad, outwardly bad as the demons one.
Well, that's the thing, though. I mean, he kind of is.
Like, well, no, he's not outwardly as bad because, as I said about him being a sociopath, he's charming enough that he can talk his way out of things. Whereas in the demons one, he just looks creepy, and he can't imagine him having the charisma to talk himself out of talk people out of blaming him for anything.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, so it's basically outwardly he's not as bad. Inwardly, he's probably as bad, if not worse.
Well, I mean, we're probably going to get into this. It feels like with this kind of Doug Naylor wanted to kind of give us character study of events that would make Lister this way, but I think he ends up the backstory doesn't quite explain just how far he does go, which is just where he just becomes super villain.
Yes, See, and I think the backstory did the opposite. Basically, because they mentioned about him being a sociopath when he was young.
Yeah.
And basically grew up as a sociopath, and the only reason he got into the GMC is because the doctor was referred to the doctor from another doctor who said they have this problem. So it's not as if the whole universe is that way. It just seems to be him.
Yeah.
Because we also find out that his Kachansky isn't actually his Kachansky. It was Rimmer's Kachansky.
Yeah, that was a bit odd.
That was a bit weird, aye.
Yeah, because it was just basically Lister had seen a photograph of what looked like him in shaving foam, and Kachansky, and that was kind of he thought that was his other self, but then apparently, like, has this conversation with a Gelf who can read his subconscious and says, "No, you knew that was not yourself. You knew that was Rimmer underneath." Though it's
that's a variation on the emo hawk.
Yeah, but that kind of, I don't know, it just seemed a bit of a...
It did. It seemed too weird because why on earth would Kachansky be with a hologram?
No, it's not that. It's more, it felt like we were just being we were basically just being mistold by the book. That's kind of what it felt like.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But it's the fact is, Kachansky's a bit more pragmatic and realistic. Even in this one, she's talking about restarting the human race and stuff like that. But they're talking about the two of them were together. But at this point,
we
don't know about the alternate Rimmer being a hard or soft light.
But I mean, the thing is, Kachansky is still not going to. I could not picture Kachansky getting with the nasty version of Lister. I think she would find him repulsive. She would know.
Yes.
She certainly wouldn't want to a relationship certainly wouldn't work. She probably tried, and he probably turned out to be too unnerving for her, and that's probably where she kind of said, "No, no, no, I'm not building a family with him because he's just all his qualities are wrong. He's
yeah." But it also implies that the Rimmer, even though they found the light bee, it implies that he was a hard light hologram as well.
Yeah,
because of the bubbles and the foam and stuff like that.
Yeah, probably.
It just seemed weird because you would have to have an alternate Rimmer. Yes, you can imagine Kachansky with an Ace type character, but you can't imagine her with a Rimmer type character as well. So, well, I mean, what type of Rimmer was he? Because you got no description of what that Rimmer was like.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, like she's got to pick a life partner out of all four of them, like because there's Lister's a no, Crichton's a mechanoid, Cat is again he's too superficial and vain and all that, and so of course there's also, well, if you read backwards, you know what sex with a cat is like, and it's not pleasant.
Yeah. And there's also the aspect of as well, but it would. That's what I'm saying. The Rimmer character would have to be a better Rimmer than the Rimmer is, because you can't imagine Kachansky with that type of Rimmer.
No, I could if he was the best of the options available. If it was like I have to settle for someone, and maybe in some ways as they're dating, because I mean maybe she found him quite charming, quite chivalrous, and this and that. Because I mean, I think
I suppose if I'm looking at the Rimmer we know, then I can just imagine her saying, "God, I'm going to die alone." Yeah, I mean, just because look at all the bad choices, no matter what, a narcissist, a sociopath, or a complete and utter tosspot. Well, what choices do you have? That's to me is no choice.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, I mean, maybe in this universe, she had a relationship with Lister. He turned out to be bad news all round, and she was emotional. Maybe it was a kind of a painful relationship, and Rimmer was there to pick up the pieces. And as he comforted her, she got closer to him. Maybe that
could be, but I'd like to have thought it's basically a better version of Rimmer, because you've got a worse version of Lister. So we don't know what the Cat or Crichton were like. You know, it's not like Angels and Demons, because they're not all that bad, because obviously you're taught there's mention of the sociologist or the psychologist talking about how he was a sociopath. So it's not as if it's like the Star Trek evil universe. Just because they're wearing a tash and a goatee that they're the evil version of themselves. But I would like to have thought that the only reason they were with the Rimmer is because he's more of an Ace type. You see what I mean? So he's the better version of him.
Well, no, you just hit the nail on the head there. You mentioned the Star Trek episode. Now, I think the evil versions of the crew work in a 45-minute episode. I don't think they could necessarily be sustainable in a long book, and that's kind of where I think the story falters a bit, because we got this whole book with this version of Lister, and it's like the more focus you get on him, the more kind of something doesn't feel quite like it's like the story kind of doesn't quite stick the landing with him.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. If you'd gone down the alternate, everybody in this universe is evil, it doesn't work. It wouldn't work. But the fact is, that's not. It just seems to be the Lister one who's the bad apple in this universe from the guys and that's what I'm saying.
So basically, the bottom line is that basically, list. Sorry. Oh, by the way, each part has right. So basically, the end of that is that Lister kind of buries his other self in the sand. The evil Lister buries
the evil Lister basically has tied up, but he gets free by burning his hands with the ropes on it, and then creeping up behind him and hitting him with a shovel, and then he just buries him just before the crew turn up.
and so basically he ends up replacing his other self. So Lister's going to get abandoned, and the crew are going to be none the wiser that they've rescued the wrong Lister. By the way, this is a like the other books, it's divided into parts, but in this version we get illustrations as well. So part 1 is Siberia. That's the Cyber Lake.
Yeah,
that's a nice illustration, I think.
It is. It's a better visualization, I must admit.
Yeah, there's the part we've just completed is Time's Fork, which is basically because that's where it's because they've landed in the wrong universe.
Yes.
And
see, that's another reason I think about this Rimmer being a better Rimmer. What shall I explain later on when we get into it, but the reason I think that the Rimmer in this universe is more of an ace Rimmer.
Yeah, well,
it's just basically because A. Kachansky was with him, but there's something else that happens later on that sort of, if you think about that, then it works a bit better.
Yeah. By the way, then find the final picture, because I do actually quite like these illustrations. Yeah,
is that the Rage? Yeah,
that's the Rage. That's the hurricane that they have to contend with.
Yeah.
And I think it's also kind of almost a bit of a double-edged thing, because basically it's also about the evil Lister's rage, because that's what he is. He's basically a child of rage, isn't he?
Yeah. I thought the Rage was actually quite good. The Rage in the book is a Gestalt entity. That was the other part of Legion. They used the Gestalt entity to actually create the Rage.
Mm-hmm.
Which, that's what I'm saying, it's almost like they picked 3 bits and just expanded it in a different way. So they had a Gestalt entity, they had like, whereas they've taken those 2 parts, but they've completely separated them and completely changed what they are, but they just kept the very basic idea of it.
Mm-hmm. Well, before we get to that,
hi, Jim.
Hello, Jim.
Yes, we're on the second part.
The third part now.
Third part. Aye, right. So this part is the part with they talk about the Guelphs. I wouldn't say the birth of the Guelphs, but I suppose it is to an extent the birth of the Guelphs, or the genetic birth of the Guelphs.
Oh, I know what you mean. The fact that the president of basically it flicks back to events in a solar system long before the millions of years before.
Yeah,
and that's where President Nixon is
not that Nixon, one of his
great uncles.
Something like that. No. One of his great nephews, because he says even my great uncle wouldn't have been that. Basically one of the Nixon's descendants who is president of Earth. Sort of to get rid of all the nuclear waste, arsenal, whatever, detonates it near the sun, because obviously the sun being a big wastebasket and would actually not feel it. Sort of, it triggers something. It triggers the helium, or the hydrogen atoms.
Basically, it causes it basically precipitates what will be a long 1,000-year process, but will eventually mean that the sun expands and consumes the solar system. And so they come up with this plan to basically send a basically they have to kind of send the genetic material of humanity. Yeah, because they want to
and the terraform ability to it.
Yeah, because I mean, Earth is going to be fine for the next several thousand years, but in the meantime, they want to ensure that when Earth does go, there's some aspect of their species survives. And so they have this idea to set up home in the Andromeda galaxy to find a particular there's a particular star they need to find that has a planet that's
in the Goldilocks, and effectively in the Goldilocks zone. It has to have a planet that is capable of being terraformed.
Yeah.
See, this part of the book had 3 different episodes. It had the DNA episode. It had the
quarantine.
To an extent, the quarantine, but it's the one with the Rimmer World. Remember?
Oh yeah,
where he goes and he's in a seed pod.
Yeah, like the like I was Adam in my own Eden, and all I was missing my own Jane.
Yeah, that's the thing. So basically, that's what it reminded me of, that episode as well. So there's wee parts of it again just brought in here and there, but it's not actually put it in that type of story. They've just taken parts of it in and changed it again. So they've got the bare essentials of that story, and then they've changed it because this one they genetically create girls to do the work.
Yeah,
they genetically modify some humans to allow them to go with the cargo. They also release some some simulants to go as well.
The humans are given this particular their aging gene is somehow
switched off.
Yeah, somehow. Yeah.
And this is when we meet Magruder's son.
Yeah.
And Magruder's son is a Marine in the Special Forces, as it were.
Yeah.
He's one of the jocks, he's effectively an ace rimmer type. And he grew up with his mother telling him how great Rimmers was, how he was so brave and all that. And that's the part, I think, what universe are we in? Are we in Rimmer's universe or are we in the alternate Rimmer's universe?
We're in Rimmer's universe. I think it's implied that we're in Rimmer's universe.
It implies it, but it just implies it. I think because it's in the universe they're in just now.
No, because it passes through the Omnizone.
Yes, it passes through the Omnizone, but I'm wondering if the Rimmer that they had was actually the Rimmer who was the ace Rimmer, and they passed through the Omnizone as well, so none of them are actually from this reality.
And no, because it actually says that the way that the date went, like basically Rimmer and Yvonne had that liaison. And in both, basically, as Rimmer remembers it and as it's described in the book, from basically Rimmer didn't phone her back because Liz had dented his confidence, and that's why. And so basically, it is implied that it is the same. It is Rimmer's son. It is from Rimmer's universe.
It was just the way the wording of it was just quite ambiguous. I thought that it could have been, was this Rimmer? I suppose this Rimmer was this Rimmer, as in, was it our Rimmer or was it a variation of Ace? And I think that's where I was looking at it. I must admit, it just seemed right for this. Just the way they were describing it, because the descriptions that Magruder kept giving him, I thought, I wonder if that's the description that would work for the Rimmer in this universe. Was he an ace type character, and all the things that he's the Magruder son has been told about was actually true in this universe? They just assumed it was Rimmer's son rather than this universe's Rimmer's son who had died. You see what I mean? And who had been with Kachansky. So would that make it a wee bit more clear why Kachansky was with him if he was an ace type character? You see what I mean? That's the way I was looking at it. Yeah, because they've already talked about going through. So maybe Magruder was actually telling him the truth about his father. But the father everybody thought it was the other one, because they had a relationship with Magruder as well. You see what I mean?
Well, no, I think maybe. Well, I see what you mean, but I think it's meant to be implied that it is from our universe, and it's basically that Von Magruder told her son these things because she didn't want to tell him the truth about what Rimmer was really like.
See, I got that as well. I must admit, I did get that as well, and I thought, yeah, I can understand that. I can really understand that, because who would want to actually be his son? But I was wondering, just when they were talking about it, and then thinking about how Kachansky was with Rim, I just was I suppose I was putting two together, but not necessarily coming up with 4. I might have been coming up with 11 rather than, you know what I mean? If I was putting 1 and 1 together, I was coming up with 11 instead of 2.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It just seemed a bit more reasonable to have that type of Rimmer in this world, and it would work with the Magruder and with Kachansky.
Yeah.
But I know I can be a pain in the butt when it comes to things like that, because I've always got a wee bee in my bonnet about something I don't see quite works the way it does.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that I'm right. I'm just saying it's just the way actually I was when I was going through it. It just sort of seemed that it was ambiguous at the best.
The part that did kind of seem a bit odd was the fact that they seem to know that Rimmer was like in this time that they seem to know from Red Dwarf's black box, because like basically Red Dwarf leaves the solar system when the radiation link happens, but they recover a black box, and somehow they know from that Rimmer's revived as a hologram, but that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Unless like the black box says that Holly kind of knows that's what he has to do.
Yeah, because it's meant to be 3 million years in the future. He revises them. That's why I'm saying it's different universes.
Yeah.
That's why I thought it was, because that makes zero sense if it's the TV universe, I suppose, because why would the black box appear and say he's been resurrected when we know that's 3 million years down the line? Even from the first book?
The only possibility is that the black box went through a wormhole, and basically the black box is sent from so far in the future or something.
There is that, but basically, you look at, remember, even the first book, the Lister gets drunk and he's just basically stoating about naked. He's constantly, he doesn't like whiskey, but it's the easiest way to get drunk, and it's portable, and that's why he brings Rimmer back to try and get a bit of sanity into him. So even in books as well as the TV show, he's brought back in the future. It's not a case of he was brought back well before the 3 million years.
Yeah.
So that's why I was thinking it's a different universe version, because unless it went through a wormhole, which I never even thought of, then it can't be the universe we're used to, where these characters come from.
Yeah.
Even if it did come through a wormhole, yeah, that would make sense. But
that's not made loose. That's not what we're told, is it?
No, it's just a case of it was ejected as he was leaving the solar system.
Yeah. So, but basically, what happens is they go to Andromeda, and then there's a mutiny of the Gelfs, so they never quite make the trip.
Yeah,
and we get little pieces of information that apparently this is what Lister was after, the evil Lister was after, because he knew that if he had the technology for terraforming worlds and reviving basically prolonging the existence of a dying race, then he would be able to barter with that, because basically it's implied that he knows the how to barter with the Gelf. He's in with that outlaw culture and those kind of and the black markets. He's very in with that, and it's implied that Crichton had the coordinates and refused to give them up, and that's why he killed Crichton and then killed the rest of the crew.
Now, yes, because they wanted to make sure he didn't get it. So because they find that because in the box it's not only Crichton's hand with the paper crunched in it, it's also a laser gun, I suppose, a cutter, basically, which was because he checked the weapon and it had laser cutting abilities. So he reckons that's what cut the cat's head off.
Well, yeah, I mean, but the thing is, it doesn't still. I can't quite picture this Lister doing that. Even it just so. I mean, it just seemed. I don't know the backstory of the back. It seemed like they wanted the twist of revealing Lister. It was actually this universe's Lister that did the killing of the crew. But
yes.
I mean, I don't know. That didn't quite.
See, I thought it was the opposite. I thought because they'd actually built up and saying how he was a sociopath, but he was very charming and stuff like that. Yeah, people wouldn't believe that he did do it, and the fact that he ended up in jail for a crime that he had not yet committed, I thought was quite good, because if it was after the fact, he probably got away with it. But because of their system, he gets caught before he does it, and it actually stops it happening. However, what else has he done in the past that he's actually in prison? He's never got in prison for. And yes, I think because he's a sociopath and he wants something, and the people standing in his way, he's quite happy to shoot. And he's quite happy to do it because yes, he did it to a mechanoid, but he also did it to the two Guelph guards. Quite the thing. And then just sort of laughed it off with Lister and says, "Sorry, I did that. I had to actually cause a distraction." Where he wasn't causing a distraction, he was just being violent to him because he was getting told what to do, and he just used that as an excuse to justify what he did. And I think it sort of justifies that, yeah, he's the type of person that was quite happily kill everybody just to get his own way. But also, he's got the personality and to talk himself out of it, because it wasn't him, it was them, and it was their fault.
See, I don't know. I mean, for me, I just felt like it wanted the twist, and it was like the aim of the book was to have that twist, and it just seemed like I don't think they really justified the twist. It just seemed like it was going for the twist. It didn't really do. It just didn't quite ring true for me. It felt like the twist was the end goal, and making it plausible wasn't.
Yeah. See, I suppose that's what it is. There's been aspects of it I've thought was weird, you really liked, and then there's bits that I thought I really liked and you thought was weird. It just goes to show the same book had different interpretations. I suppose it's like the Cockney Spot keeps going on about 40 years on nearly, and nobody can decide if Deckard's a replicant or a human. Yeah. Everybody's watched the same programs, but they've all got different opinions on it.
Yeah,
which is true, and that's why, Christ almighty, that's why geek culture works, because if everybody had the same understanding of everything they watched, what would we talk about? We would literally just be going, oh, did you see this episode? Aye. Did you like this episode? Aye. You know what I mean? That type of thing. And looking at this, the same book, it just goes to show the wee twists and turns it can take you, depends on how you see it. Which I must admit, I do enjoy, because this book, when I first watched it, I loved it. I first read it, I loved it. Mm-hmm. Rereading it, I found it's darker because I'm more used to the TV show, which is a lot lighter.
Yeah.
Whereas initially, the very first two books I thought were okay. On the rereads, I loved more because they sort of expanded. And then backwards, I liked the humour aspect of it, but some of it just didn't gel with me. But on the whole, I thought it was a better book. Whereas this one, I had the opposite. I thought it was a hell of a lot better when I was younger. And I think it's just because of the Guelph side of the story. But when I'm reading it, the Guelph side of the story is still there. But because I'm aware of that and it was something that stuck with me, it's the other parts of the story I think, it doesn't quite work, or that actually sort of changes how you see this character, which I do like, because yes, sometimes you want to see a different interpretation of your favourite character. Christ almighty, Doctor Who, every time he regenerates, so you're getting a different interpretation of the same character. Well, you were up until recently, but actually knew who I'm talking about in the whole stuff, even Christopher Eccleston one. Although I think he was very much, he reminded me a lot more of Tom Baker, Christopher Eccleston. Suppose it was his cheeky grin. Reminded me of Tom Baker's grin. But that's a different TV show. That may be next week's TV show.
Probably, yeah.
Yes. Well, I'm going to actually put off I was planning to do a Red Dwarf stream next week, but because I said for my 100, I'm going to do a Doctor Who one. Next Wednesday's going to be my 100 sub Doctor Who stream.
Well, wait, you're going to do a Red Dwarf stream again? Well, I mean, we've done the books and the TV show. We've done all the seasons. What were you just doing?
Next week I was just going to go on to doing different. Like next week Wednesday I was going to do Judge Dredd. I was going to invite the rabbi and a few other who are into the Judge Dredd, and we're just to talk about the Sylvester Stallone movie, the Carol Urban movies, comics, fan stuff. So it was basically going to just be a Judge Dredd one. But next week is definitely going to be the 100th anniversary one, and it's going to be the Tallings of Wen Chiang. I'm going to watch it and do a review, and you're more than welcome because you're a big Doctor Who classic stuff. So yes, and there'll be one or two others I'll be inviting on to celebrate the 100. And then I've got a couple of comics I want to review. I'm going to have one of the artist and the author on to review his comics, so I've got them to read. I'm going to do Judge Dredd, and I'm going to do like a movie franchise or stuff like that every Wednesday. So like it could be Babylon 5, just a generic talk, or it could be the Pink Panther, or that type of thing. I'm just going to take different things from this. It started off as I wanted to do that, but because Red Dwarf was so inundated, or sorry, no inundated. What's the word I'm trying to think? As in, there was a lot of it. I couldn't do the 13 seasons in one stream. So that's why I decided to split it up season by season. It's the same as if I did a Babylon 5 one. I would split it up into season by season. Stargate season by season rather than episode by episode. Love to do an episode by episode, but there's too many of them to do that. So you would have to do it a season by season.
Yeah.
Just on the general of it. Same idea as we did with the Dwarf. So that's what I plan to do moving forward. But definitely next Wednesday is going to be my 100 subs stream. And thankfully, YouTube, I've only taken one of my subs off me, so I'm still above the 100. I was expecting them to take 2 or 3 off just to get me below 100 so I could have a second 100 sub stream. But thankfully, they only took one off me, so I'm okay.
Cool.
And I want to join Mark C with a D, or Mark D with a C. He got his 100 subs as well, and the both of us got it the same day. When we were on the same channel, we were on Jed's Pop Culture Archivist, so he's doing his on Sunday, so I'm going to watch his as well. Right. It's got a lot to do this week. Got a lot of homework. And did you like the icon I did? For the Saturday night stream?
Oh yeah, that was very. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, the first one I did, I thought was a wee bit too crowded, hence the reason why I went and found a better picture. Although I couldn't find a good high quality picture. That was the only problem. So I had to sort of get a lower quality one and just add bits to it. So, but I'll be putting it on Twitter if everybody's happy with it, to say, hey guys, this is the new backdrop.
Yeah.
But yes, I know. Anyway, last human.
Yeah.
Yeah. I digress. I go on a tangent and I shall come back. I'll do a Billy Connolly one. You go off on a tangent and come back to the point we were at.
Right. So, premise in the jumping back to present time, the premise is evil Lister is basically mingled with the crew, and they think that the Lister they were meant to rescue died in the attempt, and so basically that they only made it back alive, and so they're taken in by him, whilst our Lister was arrested by the Gelth, and he basically said, well, look, I didn't actually I'm like all the stuff you had on my other self, I didn't do that. If you don't count, breaking in here and killing basically destroying the entire cybernet and letting all these prisoners go, I'm innocent. I was like, yeah, but we are going to count the fact that you broke
in and killed all those people. Yes, caused all those deaths. Not killed them, but caused all the deaths.
Yeah. So he's
And
back.
the reason he caused all the deaths is he turned the artificial generator off, so everybody was floating. And then when it came back on, guess what happens? Doesn't matter how high up they were, they basically came down. And they don't skirt the fact is people died because the listers only survived by pure chance.
Well, he survived because his other self-saved, didn't he? And...
Yeah, but it was pure chance because it was only because they had caught on to get, so they didn't get taken up too high, and then the way down they caught on that again, which slowed them down, and it slowed them enough so that the water had landed in the pool before they had landed in the pool.
Yeah.
So it was basically pure chance that yes, the water wasn't deep enough to allow them to go unhurt, but they still, it was pure chance they survived, and it was because his alter ego, shall we say, caught him and just delayed the fall slightly.
Well, kind of. I mean, he also ties into the to one of the support struts, which saves him as well. So he does think ahead in that regard in terms of what's going to happen when the power comes back on.
Yeah, but even at that, it still snaps, and he basically does fall. But it's things like that. So that's what. Yes, he caused the deaths, and even he could have killed himself, but it was just pure luck.
Yeah.
So, yes, so that's basically gets put in prison for that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a similar idea of the prison. It's a hell. It's basically they can go to the cinema, but every cinema's playing Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. And he works in the dentist's office. But it's basically allowing all the trainee dentists to give him fillings all the time and take his fillings out and put new ones in. So it's a horror. It's a hell on earth, or a hell in Siberia. And I must admit, I did like the idea that he had to work by getting his teeth drilled each time.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was funny. This the idea that he was working in a dentist office until he described what he was doing just to get some money.
So basically then he finds an out where he's offered a freedom if he helps them. He has to help them find the missing ship that crashed, didn't he?
Yes. And he basically gets offered a night of passion, shall we say, with a pleasure girl.
Yeah.
Which doesn't want to go because she's not broken.
That actually was quite dark, wasn't it? Because
yes, that was very dark. She was getting beaten because, it was getting beaten because it could be male or female, depending.
Yeah,
it was all to do with the person's desires, so it could have been anything. So it's not technically female; it was it, but it was perceived as a female.
Being pimped.
Yes, and basically the guards would beat it if it didn't do what it was told and stuff like that. I thought that took a very, very dark turn. And I think there was only one wee teeny bit of humour in it that I sort of smiled at when he says, "I'm not interested in you," and she turned into Kachansky in a red thong. And he goes, "Okay, I am interested in you, but..." And I thought that was the only part that sort of gave me a wee smile. But the rest of that whole part of the book, I thought... No, don't like that. It's not Dwarf. Neither is. It's just a wee bit too much.
Well, I mean, there is a part in Infinity Welcomes Careful Drivers where you actually get a sense, like you go into Lister's, like, because when Lister first sees Crichton doing Rimmer's orders, like you kind of get an insight into Lister where he says, "Look, I've always hated slavery, and I especially hate this idea of the happy slave."
Yeah,
this is kind of taking that idea where, well, what happens if someone is genetically programmed to be a slave and basically love the abuser? And that was the really dark part, wasn't it?
It was, and it was the fact is because it hadn't been broken in, it didn't want to do it, and it was getting beaten and forced to do it, and that's when I thought it took another dark turn as well. Yeah. So it was a slave because it had to do it, but because it hadn't been broken, it was being forced to do it as well. So it was doing it to please the master, but it wasn't used to do it and didn't want to do it because it just wanted to be with the master, and the master kept beating her or beating it to get it to do what it wanted to. And it's just, I don't know, it's just that whole section of it I just found too dark and too out there.
Well, I mean, Lister kind of
it wasn't bad for Lister, because the Lister, how he handled it and says, listen, I'm not going to do it, and I'm not interested. That was the only part. It was the humour when it turned into Kachansky standing there and nothing except a red thong. That was the only wee smile, because he goes, yes, well, I'm interested, or you are my type, but I'm not going to do anything about it. So it was a case of, even the fact is, oh, really? I'm no your type. Like this, it's the same type of trope you're seeing in a lot of programs. Listen, dear, listen, sir, I'm not interested in you. Even this, okay, I'm interested, but I don't want to. That type of thing. It was almost a case. It was a case of, it allowed the Lister to actually turn around and say, no matter what, I'm not going to do that.
Well, it allowed him to show integrity, because it was, firstly, he wasn't going to take advantage of a creature been programmed that way, and secondly, he wasn't going to be unfaithful to Kachansky, and that's kind of where you saw the character of Lister. Well,
I think, yeah,
and that felt true to the show. I'd say
it did. The only part I thought was less true was the second aspect of that, when they wake up and the guard says, did it behave itself? And he goes, yeah, fine, everything was superb. And it found out that the fact is, he lied to protect it. It was quite happy and didn't understand why. And they explained about how it's got 5 hooks, 4 hooks in the master, so it does everything the master wants, but 1 hook in its potential prey, as it were, because it's an emo hawk, but it's a pleasure gelf, so it's sort of mixed between an emo hawk and a pleasure gelf. It changes depending on the desires of the one with the 5th hook, and that's when you find out if you've got the 5 hooks in, then it's a symbiote.
Yeah.
But the part where he wants it to help him escape, and he effectively manipulates it by saying, could you be Crichton for me so I could talk to Crichton? And he asked Crichton, but the Gelf knows that he knows all this. So what he's doing is basically talking to himself.
Yeah.
And he basically says, how can I get the Gelf to help me? Well, get the Gelf to be you, so she'll understand you, so she'll help you. And I thought that was the manipulation aspect of that. Sort of took some of the character from Lister that had just built up just before that point. The manipulation of it to escape sort of took it away again. Mm-hmm. But it didn't obviously have a negative impact, because obviously the Gelf knew what was happening, because obviously aware, and it did protect him later on.
Yeah.
So it did. So I just thought, for a character, consider it built his character up very well. It just sort of, it was almost putting you shine something up and then you just put your thumb right across it just to actually mark it again. It was almost taking the shine off a part of his character by manipulating something. Rather than asking and convincing is different, but manipulating it into doing it is, I think, is the worst aspect of it.
Well, I mean, his main goal was to get back to his crew and save them from his other evil self, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And that's why he had to escape. He had to. Yeah.
Yep. Well, thank you, Wendology, for joining us again. And I'll catch you at the weekend.
All right. Take care. Well, see you soon.
Okay. Yep. Yeah. But yeah, I just thought that was the only part. The only thing I thought was just if he had talked to it and convinced it, because listen, I'm not as bad as people think, and you can read my mind, and you know I want to do this, and I would like you to help me. Would have a convincing argument would have been better, but it was the manipulative way it got the help. He got the help I didn't like. Do you see what I mean? It's just that part of it. It was just the manipulation rather than if it was convincing and saying, read my mind, you can sense everything I know. This is what I'm looking for, and it's that. But it's sort of used the manipulation, which sort of wasn't as good, shall we say.
Well, I mean, he wanted to get out of that situation as
yes,
well.
But that's what I'm saying. He did the least, to me, the least honourable way. If you convince somebody to give a decent argument and convince them, but he didn't. He manipulated them into doing something that make them more susceptible to what he wanted. Right. So you can still be a good guy, but as soon as you start manipulating somebody, doesn't matter what your reason you're doing it, you're still not the right knight anymore. Mm-hmm. It's a tarnish on it. It's like saying, I was watching Excalibur, so Lancelot and Guinevere. Lancelot was the premium knight, the white knight, but he had an affair with the king's wife. So no matter what, that tarnishes his reputation. Still could be chivalrous and all those, but as soon as he's done something like sleep with his friend's wife, it's tainting his image. And it's the same idea for this with Lister. It taints his image for me, and the fact that he does the manipulation rather than the convincing. They could have used the girl's understanding of, they could have said, listen, turn into me, then you'll understand why I want you to help. That's not a manipulation. That's basically just saying, if you want to know why I would like you to help me, turn into be me so you can understand it. That's not manipulation, but he sort of manipulates it into doing it so it will understand. It's just it's a nitpick, I know, but it's just one of those wee things that a slight change on how it was written would still work. So take out the Crichton bit. Instead of having the Crichton and Crichton explaining how to actually get it to help, just saying, listen, I would really like your help. Why don't you actually turn into me and you'll understand why I want it and why I need your help. And then it could have done it, and then it could have actually seen it through his eyes and still did it. Yeah. But it's not manipulation. It's just understanding. Whereas he manipulates it so it understands what he wants. It's just a wee niggle, nothing important as it were, but it's just one of those wee teeny things. I think it just takes a wee bit of the shine off of Lister.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? I can understand why, he still did it and why he did it that way, because he wanted to get back under any circumstances. It's just the road to hell is paved with good intentions, and that's one of the first steps, I think, is manipulating someone to do something you want them to do rather than what they want.
Well, I mean, at the moment he's trying to get out of hell, isn't he?
Yes, he's trying to get out of hell, and he actually does things that would actually lead him back there.
Well, while this is going on, Crichton does begin to doing the pieces together about the other Lister. He basically
it's when they're come out of stasis.
He does first of all he does a dental check and notices he's somehow regrown 2 teeth, and then he hacks the other Starbug's files, and he finds the psychiatrist's file on that Lister, and that's when he finds out that he was a bit of a sociopath.
Yeah,
and at first Lister tries to play innocent and say, look, I wasn't I had to pretend to be him because I don't want because he died and I don't want Chansky to know that her Lister's dead. And then
Crichton says, I've read your files, and he says, no, she had it in for me, just check it and you'll see it's everything. And as soon as he turns his back, thump.
Yeah, that's when Lister starts trying to kill him.
Yes. And that's when the Guelphs turn up. And because Crichton, due to his programming, can't really defend himself by hurting Lister, even though Lister's trying to kill him. But the Guelphs turn up. So Lister's bride turns up.
Yeah.
And Crichton uses his, sort of gives it a wee smile to himself, saying that, oh, these girls are here, we owe them stuff. And he says, good, give them what they want and get out. So basically, they come aboard and he tells the girls to take what you came for and get out. And they basically came for their husband.
Now this is why in Red Dwarf 7, when they're attacked by that Guelph ship, I knew this is revenge for Remo Hawk. This is revenge for Lister jilting his wife. They're demanding that he basically gets back with her.
Yeah. I must admit, yes. So this is it, but it's the same again. I thought that was quite a good scene with Crichton couldn't do any damage. He couldn't protect himself really. However, he found a way of doing it without actually doing any damage by just saying, listen, we need to let these girls in or else they'll destroy us because we owe them stuff. And he says, good, tell them to take their stuff and go. And they did. Yeah. I thought it was quite a good way of manipulate. That was a good manipulation because you're manipulating somebody by telling them the truth. You're just leaving what the truth is out. Yeah. And it's done to actually, so there's the difference between a good manipulation and a bad manipulation.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought it was manipulated quite well that he told them the truth, didn't lie to him, but he didn't tell him the truth he actually heard.
Yeah.
Which I quite liked. But I also liked the fact that the girls got him back and I just thought, oh dear, I can just imagine what's going to happen. Until it did.
Yeah. So then, but because of the attack, and suddenly they start crashing, isn't it?
Yes, they start actually plummeting, and he has to actually wake the rest of them up, and doesn't give them a chance to actually sort of clear their head.
So basically, they end up crashing on what it seems to be a lava planet, but they end up flowing downstream to the patch that's been partially terraformed.
No, I thought it says the lava was only the first, was it 500 meters or something like that? So they crashed through. It was almost like the center of it had been terraformed, not the surface.
But yeah, because that's the thing. The craft, the Mayflower, which was sent. The craft, I forgot, right. The name of the ship that Magruder was on and all the terraforming engineers were on, and all the Guelph that basically crashed because of the mutiny. It was called the Mayflower, and it had a particular virus, like a genetic engineered virus, that could convert lava to ash, and then convert the ash to or the other viruses that could convert the ash to life breathing water and broccoli,
slime and stuff like that. Yeah. So it was basically to terraform it, but
because of the way it crashed, it only ate some of the lava, and so it basically safeguarded a patch of where the ship was intact.
Yeah,
and so the crew know that if they get in and they kind of find the terraforming equipment, they can cool the lava, or rather, and from that they can escape.
Yes. So this is where we come across 3 episodes. You've got DNA, you've got Rimmer World, and you've got what was the other one?
Quarantine.
There's another. No, there was another bit. I'm trying to think. There's another one I actually was in, and it just disappeared from my head. It was just when you were talking about it, it just actually came in and then it went straight back out. I'm trying to even.
No, not quarantine. Okay, because
it'll come back to me. Don't worry. So basically, do you know what it is?
Back to reality.
Back to reality. it's the bit where that's what it was. Because quarantine's obviously for the simple fact is the luck and the charisma virus, the sex virus, that type of thing. So that is quarantine. You've got the DNA with Crichton. You've also got Rimmerworld where they found the seed chip and they're messing around with it.
Yeah.
So yes, but the back to reality one is sort of when they wake up and they just don't know what's happening. Mm-hmm. So that's basically these are the in the ship. That's the parts it just sort of jumped out at me.
Yeah,
but I'm still. I actually enjoyed this section.
Yeah,
with Magruder's son. Mm-hmm. And the way it was going, the only part I disliked was Crichton. And I'll get to that when we get to it. Because it really annoys me, and it still annoys me every time I see it.
Just to explain, they find the ship, they find the and during then they find the DNA mogrifier, and similar thing happens where it's Rimmer rather than Lister who basically gets, because of the cat's bungling, gets turned into a chicken. And then they finally bring Rimmer back to his original form. And then Crichton gets the idea that he can actually turn himself human. And he does that off his own back while no one else is looking.
Yes, and he goes to run to tell Kachansky. And he comes in and he says, morning, wake up, how's that? And she says, oh, Crichton, best thing to do is wear clothes. So he's obviously talking about naked, and he goes, oh, use humans, ha, 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 ha. Chris, and he calls her stuff like that. The part I didn't like about this is how long has he been around the crew? Even in a TV show, how long has he been around the crew? Yeah, he implies that, sorry, how do you charge yourself? This has he ever came across that at all, ever? So why would they think that? Just because Mechanoid did that, so why would they suddenly forget any time he's come in with their breakfast and woke them up? Why they would do that? And the nipples. He's been around humans enough that he's done medical procedures on he did a medical procedure on Kachansky. He helped out. He did it on the TV show. He's did it in Lister. Yeah, he didn't know nipple nuts weren't tunable.
Do you know what?
Do you see what I mean? It's things like that really annoyed me because it made zero sense and to do with the character. They were hilariously visual and when they were talking about it, but the things like with the socket for plug-in and the nipples and stuff like that, and the zoom feature and all that, and you're sitting there thinking he's been around humans long enough to know this is all rubbish. So why is it? And it's only there to be humorous, nothing else.
Well, I mean, I will say this: the things what did nag me was basically Kachansky gets a lot of Lister's dialogue, and I feel like it worked better. It worked with Lister better than it did with Kachansky, and I feel like also it did feel a bit of a cut and paste giving her his dialogue. But also, I mean, one thing that you just kind of hit the nail on the head a bit for me there was, I think Kachansky being a woman might have a different answer for Crichton about what purpose nipples concern, because obviously there's the
because she basically says they're just for decoration.
Yeah.
Which, being female, it's not actually true.
No.
Yes, they are very nice decorations, but that's not what their primary function is. On a male, yes, they might be only there for decoration because they're useless.
Yeah.
But it's, so as you said, it's a cut and paste directly from even the way she says to him, you're neither one thing or the other. It's Crichton, man. You're neither one thing or the other. What Lister says on the show, Kachansky says word for word in the book. Yet you can't see her being that Crichton man, and that's the way Lister talks. So yes, it seemed very cut and paste. Even the humorous parts from it, but even then, when I saw it in the show, They were hilariously funny, not denying that, but they made zero sense with the Zoom features because he's been around humans. It's not as if he just suddenly he didn't know what he was.
I mean, I think I could understand him maybe getting the not understanding the Zoom function. Well, maybe not knowing that humans don't have a Zoom function, but I mean, the rest I can kind of see a point on that he would know that you don't recharge that way, and he would know, the nipples don't work that way. But I mean, I think if they left it at the Zoom thing, he did understand.
I suppose you could get away with a Zoom, yes, but when he goes on about all the split screen and all that, no. But the Zoom function I can understand because as if you're just looking at something, yeah, you would zoom in, but he's been around people with wearing glasses, I'm sure. So it's things like that, you see what I mean? Mm-hmm. Or he knows that humans must use binoculars and stuff like that. That's what I'm saying. He's just been around humans too long not to know these things. Because I'm sure, see, if you handed him, when he turned human and he was going on about all that and you handed him a set of binoculars, he would first of all look through them and look round. It's not as if he wouldn't know what binoculars were or stuff like that. That's why I think that sequence just doesn't make sense. Although it is a funny sequence. I'm not denying that. It's hilariously funny when you're watching it. It's like, remember I was saying about Tomorrow's War? If you watch it without thinking about it, it's an entertaining thing. But as soon as you think about it, it sort of takes you away from it because it makes no sense. It's the same as this. I could watch the Red Dwarf, that episode, without thinking about it, and it's hilariously funny. But see, if my mind kicks in, as soon as I pick up one thing, I go, bugger, because it makes zero sense and it takes it out, and I can't find it as funny. So I switch my brain off in certain things and I keep it switched on for others. I know it. My wife says I keep it switched off all the time, but that's just me.
Yeah.
That's me. That's me just being a man. I can't help it. My brain's in neutral, my mouse is on, is basically still accelerating.
Well, the thing is, this kind of does touch on something, because when Crichton has this existential ponder about something that just comes out of nowhere. Now Rimmer had an existential ponder during the probably the searching of the ship, where he was just kind of, and I thought, this is coming out of nowhere. This seems a bit, it's almost dragging out. It's almost, I don't know what the word is. It just seemed a little bit random.
Contrived.
Well, it just seemed to, kind of maybe, but it just seemed a bit kind of, didn't seem to evolve from the situation. It just seemed to be planted, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. See, I found there's one or two bits like that. It's just almost like they're there, pardon me, to move the story on. They just don't really make much sense, except they needed to actually show this. So they showed it, or they talked about it. You didn't really need it.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, the very first time Lister meets, what would you call him? Magruder, right? First time he meets him, and he's basically talking about, and he's saying about my father and and he's talking about like that, and he goes, "Who's your father?" And they told him, and he sort of, that's all true, man. It's almost a case of they didn't actually give you that. You can imagine his thought process. God, what do I say? You can just imagine his face sort of going solid, and he's saying to himself, God, what do I say? Is that really Rimmer he's talking about? Or is it another one? Or do I tell him? Do I not? And but it didn't even give you that. And there's a book, it allows you to actually see behind the scenes of someone's mind working.
You mean
it just sort of went, whoop. He's such a good guy. Yes, that's all true.
Wait, do you mean like, because I think I know what you're getting at here. Or rather, I can see something from this, which is, wouldn't Lister want to actually maybe test out, is this guy from his dimension or the...
Yeah, just accepted that it was his one. That's what I'm saying.
Because I mean, if if the Rimmer he was told about really was this way, then it would say, well, that's not our Rimmer. So he's not from our universe.
Yeah, exactly. But it didn't even actually, or even you would go through. So, who is your father? You would call her Rimmer, Arnold Rimmer. And it didn't get into his head going, my God, is he talking about ours? Or is there another one? Is he from this dimension? Or if it is ours, what do I tell him? Do I tell him the truth? But then again, I'm not going to see it. You didn't hear all that in his head. It's just almost a case of, yeah, it's all true. And you're sitting there thinking, really? Because there's another, in a book, I can understand the TV show, they might say, well, we can't really show, unless the actor can actually show his face, going through all his thoughts in his head, so you can see it in his face that he's thinking all these things. You don't know what he's thinking, but you can imagine. Whereas in a book, they can write what he's thinking, yet it didn't mention it. It just sort of, no problem.
But usually it's bad form to write what someone's thinking. It's better to kind of imply it through their emotions, their actions. You can a little bit describe what's going on in their head, but it's generally encouraged to show rather than tell.
Yes. But on the TV show, I definitely agree they can't do that. But in a book, you have got that flexibility. You can actually still have a wee bit of your thought process of him, of Rimmer, the Lister's just sitting there talking to himself, going, is he think? Or it doesn't even need to say he is thinking this. It's just a case of Rimmer. He says, you might know him as Ace Rimmer, and then it's just a wee bit of dialogue. Oh my God, is he talking about our Rimmer, or is he talking about another Rimmer? It's that type of thing, whereas it's implied this is what he's thinking, but it's just the wording of it. It's just, I just thought it was a case of he just sort of said, yeah, it's all true.
Well, see, I kind of know what I think Lister was thinking in the situation, because it's like he knows these, because basically they're all stranded on this planet where they have to deal with that Gestalt entity, the Rage, because basically the Rage is
and he thinks all the other ones are away with his alter ego and never going to come back because they don't know.
I need to explain what the Rage is. Basically, the Gelf thought that they knew that the system was getting closer to the black hole, and the black hole is, of course, the gateway to the Omniverse, and so they were hoping that they could terraform a planet where they could lie in wait underground whilst they pass through the Omnizone into a safe dimension. And the Rage was supposed to be the Gestalt. First of all, they created the Siberian to house all the criminals, and they tried to create a Gestalt entity that would help terraform the world and act benevolently. But because they're all criminals, it just did the selfish thing and just trashed everything. They thought that this Rage would work because
they got good people.
Yeah, but because they were subject to an injustice because they were innocent, all the rage of their injustice manifests instead, and that's what's trashed the planet. And so it's tried to make the planet completely uninhabitable for the Gelf. So now they're trapped there. So to get back to what I was saying, though, it's like Lister maybe is thinking, well, look, Magruder is kind of clinging to the ideal of his man being this great figure and that he can live up to him, and he thought, well, look, the situation for them is hopeless enough. I can't tell him that because that will crush his whole life, kind of thing.
Yes, I quite agree, but it was just a case of it just seemed to say it sort of come across it very quickly. You would have thought there would have been something to even suggest that he was thinking it over or mulling it over what he say. Even if they didn't actually get it, there was he says, "Sir, are you all right?" implying that he'd been standing staring at him with his mind wandering, but there was nothing. It was almost a case of, yeah, all right, which I can understand. All that, yes, he's not going to actually do it because he thinks they're never going to see him again. So does it matter if he actually tells them the truth or not? Because all it would do is hurt him, nothing for Rimmer or anything like that, because he doesn't think he's going to see them again. So I can understand that aspect of that, yes.
He's thinking that it's not his place to tell him the truth, it's Rimmer's.
Yes. Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. But there was almost like there was no thought in it. He just says, yeah, that's right. And then it was a case of, it was sort of implied that was the reasons why he did it. But it was almost like he just said, if somebody asks you a question, you go, aye, without even listening to them or thinking about what you need to do. You just say aye without saying anything or thinking anything. Yeah. And then later on you think, well, I said aye, and why did I say aye? Oh, I thought this and I thought that. It's almost a hindsight thing. It's coming in, whereas it just didn't imply he thought about it at all. He just answered. And then it sort of suggested later on that the reason he did it was this, and this. But that would have been better if it was done at the time of him answering him. The thought process was sort of implied or shown or something, even if it was a case of he basically, Magruder turns around and says, "Sir, are you all right? Did you hear me?" And then he would have says, "Oh Christ, I don't know how long I've been standing here not answering him," which implies that he's in shock by who it is, and he's been sitting there thinking, and it implies that he's been standing there and his mind's going all over the place. And that's when he goes, yes, that's right. I know him. He's all right. There's no implication that he thought. He just blurted it out. Do you see what I mean? Just putting that one line or two lines in there, one saying, "Sir, did you hear me?" And he goes, "My God, how long have I been standing no answering?" Yes, of course, that's your father, all right. And it sort of implies that he's zoned out. He could be have thought about all this, but then he's come back with the answer. There was that 2 lines of text would have actually implied that he'd thought about it, and that's why he gave an answer. But there was no, it was almost a case of the next line was, "Yes, that's right, that's your father." And you're sitting there thinking, where's the thought? There's no even implication that he thought, or there's a delay in him saying it. It's just sort of the flow just didn't work for me. Mm. And then he mentions it later on that the reason he did do it because he's not going to ever meet him because they're away. But that's a hindsight. It's almost a case of, oh, we've said it. Oh, now we'll go back. Why not just put that 2 lines in? Because it's about, you can put that 2 lines in there beforehand.
Yeah.
It's just, that's what I'm saying. It just didn't flow quite well for me, that part of it. And I couldn't actually write a bloody paper, never mind anything else. I couldn't actually write anything. I hated university for having to write papers on certain things because I could not. I liked theoretical stuff because practical stuff, sorry. So I could explain how things worked, no problem. But see if I had to create a story, very generic, no good.
Well, no, have you never taken writing classes?
Never.
Because see, I have, you see, and I actually quite enjoyed it. But it was like it gives you the framework of how to tell a story, how to, the do's and don'ts of what to do as a writer. And because I think I've always liked writing, but I do feel it's getting writing lessons really helped in terms of refining the craft kind of thing.
That's what I'm saying. Whereas me, I know I've got no ability in that at all because I suppose I've got a very analytical mind, so I can see certain things. Like even when I'm reading, I can notice wee silly bits that just don't seem to make sense. Doesn't mean I can't enjoy it, but if I was trying to write something, I would have zero. Even if somebody told me, right, I want you to write it with this, and this, I wouldn't know how to build that because when it comes down to it, that aspect of it, I'm not creative at all. Right. So yes, but even I can see things like if I want to actually tell that, I'm going to tell it here rather than there. So even a couple of lines here, expanding what they were talking about makes it a bit better than that. And that's nothing to do with being a creative. That's just thinking how that just didn't make sense. So how would you make that make sense? So it's being more analytical. I could do that aspect of it. I couldn't write a story, and I know you need to have at least a creative bone in your body.
Yeah.
And I don't. I'm well aware of that. But it's the analytical side. That's why I can see something wrong that I think is wrong, and I can look for a way to fix it to my head. And I know it's only basically they call it our head canon.
Yeah.
And it's that I know it's not a creative way of doing things. It's a more analytical way of doing things. He needed to say it here, so these 2 lines or something like this would fix that. It's like turning around. I know fine well if I want to fix something, I could put a bit of sellotape on it, temporarily just puts a bit on it, but you need to fix it properly.
Well, I mean, if you've seen a Red Dwarf, the documentary on the making of the Red Dwarf USA, you see that's what Rob and Doug were doing. They were trying to suggest, well, look, you've got to tailor these things to the characters. You can't just have all these one-liner gags as a band-aid to it. You got to,
and that's what they were doing, because they took it overnight and actually tried to rewrite it to satisfy it.
I would love to see that script they did.
So would I, if that would have actually, considering the way it was butchered for the US. Yes, I would have loved to have seen it.
Yeah.
Even just actually released it as a book, because there's been ones that's basically Doctor Who, the scripts for certain shows. I've got a couple of script books here, but I would love to see that for that Red Dwarf one, just to see the difference.
Yeah,
that would be fun, because the Red Dwarf US was absolute pants, both of them.
They were just.
I know. Thank Christ I never actually had to do the US pilot. Not a chance. All I need to say is US pilot, crap, don't watch. Next.
Yeah.
Stream ended.
Well, I mean, we've touched on it enough with the
bits and pieces, I know, because we have talked about it throughout the things, because it does get brought up and it's hard not to actually mention it. But the last human we'll stick to.
Yeah. So the thing is, so basically they want to get, basically Crane wants to become, it's not working out for him being human, so he goes back to the DNA craft to get the to change back. Now this gets a bit fuzzy, doesn't it? Because we never actually see him try and change back, but like suddenly he's later in the plot we see that
it basically, see, that's the thing, it implies he is, but it only talks about he taps his chest plate.
Yeah,
but is that is he wearing some type of armor, or is he back to being Crichton? It just says, it mentions his chest plate. It doesn't mention anything else. So could that leave it wide open that he's actually just wearing something on his chest, because he did get shot?
Now, see, I mean, the thing is, it does. If I was going to, the thing about this book is, it does feel like it's a little bit of a rush job. I mean, I know that they had deadlines, didn't they? And
yes.
So like there was like, he kept on forestalling his publisher, saying, "Yeah, I'm going to come out with a book soon. I'm going to come out with a book soon." And I think they both did, and I think because they did a 4-book deal, hadn't they?
Yes.
Now, the 4-book deal was with Penguin, wasn't it? But I mean, they were published by Viking first, or something. Is that right?
I think the first 2 were, yes.
Well, no.
See, I thought they had actually didn't have a 4-book deal. They had they did the first book and the second book, and then they got another 2-book deal, and that's when they decided, well, and then they split it, so 1 each. Because I thought they were different publishers for the last 2 compared to the first 2.
They were both published by Viking, and then they were all published by Viking, and then I think by Penguin. So I think the deal was with Penguin, but I think it was always a 4-book deal. And so, but I think the thing was, Better Than Life was almost the perfect ending. So it was a bit. It was a bit difficult to follow it up, and especially follow it up with 2. So I think basically with so it did feel like this was, he had to write it, and it wasn't, because he was writing it solo. I mean, it's not as easy to write the same thing solo if you don't have it, because like if you got a co-write, obviously it helps enormously. You know, it cuts down the time.
Yeah, and also you could both split ideas against it if you're not entirely sure. This bit seems a bit clunky, but I can't think of a way around it. Then the 2 of you could sit down and talk it through and see how a better way of doing it. Yeah, it would always be better. That's what I was saying. Like, I was talking to Alpha Omega, and Alpha was doing I was watching his Faulty Towers, and he kept saying, "Oh, I hate this dead air," and I says, I kept doing that as well because I was ums and ahs because I was doing the stream myself, and I says that's why I got a guest on, and I like doing chats with other people because it's more dynamic. Because if you trip up with something or there's you're not entirely sure what's happening or how to describe something, somebody else can come in and then it's a case of the conversation goes a bit better.
Yeah, that's. I mean, the same with me. I never do solo streams because I just know if I do, it's going to be dead air. Because I'm just going to. If I don't have something to bounce off of, I'm going to.
See, that's why if you look at my early stuff, it's mostly videos, very rarely live, and it's because I was trying to do it and then edit the video, and even at that, there's still the and things like that, and it's a case of I didn't like it, so and I couldn't actually cut it out because I had it my face in it, so it looks as if I was jerking all over the place if I was taking the ums and ahs out.
Well, the Day-to-Day did something on that, didn't it? They had that workplace where there was that guy who kept saying and they had to get the entire office to repeat just to kind of point out he was doing it, just to kind of get him to cut it out. Kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like he's on the phone to someone and they're going, just a minute. It's like, I'll cut it down and on a phone call.
But it's the same idea. I found myself when I was doing the streams, I was just thingy, and it's that, and that's what I was saying to Alpha, because Alpha was saying he didn't like the dead air, and I says it's just have a friend on the stream, and just that way you can gab. So if you've got to do something, at least you know that you could bump off each other, and if you feel as if you're lacking something to say, then your co-host can nip in and say stuff, and it keeps the conversation going.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it is the same. I learned it the year. I was a year doing it before somebody told me. Try having a friend on, and it's a lot easier. And I did it, and it worked a hell of a lot better. And I felt it was a more comfortable way of doing it. But if I look at my old ones, I sit there and go, "Oh my God." Whereas I think I can imagine somebody who's used to a writing partnership suddenly going solo because they've used to having somebody they can chat to and discuss things, and suddenly a case of, oh well, I can't actually phone them up because we've decided to do it separately, so I'll just have to work it out myself. Yeah, I mean, so I think that's where I think in The Last Human, especially backwards to an extent, I found the humor was sometimes went to the ridiculous, although it was really fun. But I think this one went to the darker places, whereas when the two of them are together, they could have a very dark scene and then a stupid one-liner straight afterwards. It's like, I know he wasn't my dad, and I know they were all dead. It's 3 million years, but I just got that letter. There's Rimmer and Lister. Actually, Rimmer's pouring his heart out, and then the cat come up and says, "What's for food? I've got to eat." And he says, "Rimmer's dad dead. I prefer fish." So there you go. You've got something very poignant, and they've got something hilariously funny put in at it. So to me, that's the two of them working in unison very well. One of them's actually, it could be very dark, go down that route, and there's something that comes in, it's hilariously funny, and it ties the scene up, so it's not overly serious or overly hilarious. It's just a nice mix of, oh my God, did he really say that? Whereas I think you could look at the two books with the guys done separately. Last Human's a lot more nihilistic and dark, whereas I thought Backwards was more silly humour, especially with the whole Backwards theme, and mentions the things that happened in it. That's why I think the two of them, where it works better than when the two of them did the first two books together.
Well, I mean, because I know what you mean. It's like with a scene like that, it says all it needs to say, but also adds a bit of levity that kind of gives a good payoff. So it feels like it feels like a good end, it reaches a climax, and it kind of Feels like a payoff. Now you did say nihilistic. Now this book does get nihilistic, particularly with the evil listed, doesn't it?
Yes. Basically, they starting off with the killing of the cat, Crichton, Lister, and Kachansky. Then the people all dying at the, I keep forgetting the name, Siberia, yeah, and then the attack in the ship where effectively everybody dies. Then the rage killing, they came across the ship, which everybody seemed to kill each other, which reminded me a bit of,
you know, reminded me of Supergirl.
No, it actually reminded me of the one, the Red Dwarf. Remember was it the Despair Squid one? Where they killed they basically, the guy committed Harry Carey. Remember, he actually had written the bit where he actually had, he says he's writing something there else. What does that say? It said somebody badly in need of a pen.
No, that's Sirens.
I saw it as, what was the one that they all killed? They killed themselves. Was that the Despair Squid?
That was back to reality. Yeah,
back to reality. So that's what I'm saying. It just reminded me of that, with they came in and they all killed each other, and it's because of the rage. So there's a lot of, even the bit where Lister comes back, the Dark Lister comes back.
That was a bit ridiculous, I thought.
It was. Basically, he got into the thing with 4 Gelfs, and he managed to kill the 4 of them.
Well, no. See, that wasn't so much ridiculous. It was more just the way he was being prolonged as this supervillain in the thing. That didn't feel right. That kind of felt a bit contrived, a bit forced. It felt like he was just being pushed as the villain far too much. It was like,
yes, but the reason I thought it was a bit silly was the fact is he had already, as far as they were aware, he had ran out on her. Yet somehow he managed to convince him to let him go so he could somehow get a hold of something to kill 4 Gelfs. If you had run away and you had been physically brought back, do you think you're going to get left a possibility to get away or to do anything that might actually stop you getting taken back? That's the part I thought was a bit ridiculous, because they've come all that way to get him, yet he manages to talk his way around as if nothing. That's the parts that I just thought was a bit ridiculous, because the Gelfs would have had him, made sure that they had him locked somewhere, or they had him where they could see him.
Well, see, I think, and I don't think they needed to explain that necessarily, because I think Lister just had that much of a killer instinct that I could kind of see him being that deadly to them.
The deadly part I don't have issues with. It's how he managed to kill 4 Gelfs, because I've already said the Gelfs are stronger and stuff like that. Even this one, they talk about the Kinatawawi being, is it bears or thingy, or gorillas? They basically put it's like, so they basically, it's a big, powerful animal they are genetically modified from. Yet they're basically saying that he managed to overpower 4 of them. That's the part I don't get. It's just they went there to drag him back, yet he somehow managed to get enough freedom that he could go and get a gun or whatever he did to kill them all.
Well, wait, I mean, if this was the Master in Doctor Who, that probably wouldn't need to be explained, would it? You just know that the Master was that cunning and that deadly. I mean, I think that was kind of what they were trying to imply about this.
I know, but it just didn't work, because it didn't come across as that. He didn't come across as overly intelligent. He just came across, you were basically told he managed to talk his way out. He was charming.
Oh, no, see, I didn't get that sense. I got the sense he was just that violent that he could just kill them all in one go.
No, see, I got the because they actually mentioned in the report that he could talk his way out of trouble.
No, but that doesn't mean he did that with the Gelf. That just means that's how he got out of. That's why he was never disciplined on Red Dwarf. Or yes, he was never kicked out of the Space Corps.
Yeah, but I just can't see him, because it being that, considering you're talking about 4 powerful Gelfs, I just thought it just didn't make sense. yes, I could have imagined them getting away somehow, but overpowering and killing 4 Guelphs in a small ship. It's not as if it's like Red Dwarf and he could have hid anywhere and he could have picked them off one by one over weeks because he could hide and it's such a big ship. But it's a small ship and he managed to take out 4 powerful Guelphs. That's the only part I found it just a bit ridiculous. Even though he could be evil and a killer, it still has to get the opportunity. And with 4, I'd be like you, know how much, matter how cunning you were and how much of a killer you could be. If you're actually being dragged back by 4 big burly guys, what's the chances of you even doing anything to get a chance to get weapons or to take them out? Do you see what I mean? That's the part of it. It's they were there to bring him back, yet he somehow managed to overpower them and kill them.
Well, I mean, I didn't.
I think it's the case of the only reason they had him say that and do that was so they could bring him back as a extended villain. I think they should have just left it at that point and he was gone.
Maybe,
I would have preferred as if they'd brought the simulants back because they had been mentioned in that ship. Because they'd mentioned he'd mentioned that there was some simulants in a cell and some had got out, but it turned out they were Guelphs, so it could just metamorphose. But it implies that the other ones, there was simulants somewhere. So maybe there was still a simulant on that planet. Being a simulant didn't matter if it's not capable of sustaining life because it's a simulant. So it doesn't need the food, the air, the same way humans do or Guelphs do. Yeah. So it could have been the simulant was basically the bad guy at the end, which I think you're right. The only reason the silliness part of the Dark Lister escaping was so they could prolong him as a villain when it didn't need it. And I just thought that was a bit crazy. But the reason they justified him coming back, I thought was silly as well. Not only did they manage to kill them, but he managed to hide out in the ship somewhere.
Well, they were all preoccupied though at the time, weren't they?
I know, but they would have known the ship would have left, but they're implying that the ship was still attached because he'd killed them before they'd actually got to the ship, to their transport ship.
Well, he could have facilitated the separation whilst he was after he'd killed them. Maybe he could just have let the other ship go or something. That could have got lost in the lava or something. I don't know.
But it's just the way they actually stated it in the book. It's almost like before they even got on the ship, he'd killed them and come back through. There wasn't anything else about how the ship had taken off or whatever, if they were the only 4 on it, or it just, because, as you said, they brought him back for no reason except to make him a bigger villain. I think that the reason and how they got him back didn't make sense either.
Well, see, now I think for me, why it made sense was they just thought they were going to bring him back as their bride, as basically the bride to the end. They just thought he was a coward and they didn't anticipate him being that much of a killer. So they probably were taken aback by just how violent he could be, how deadly he could be, because they weren't expecting that Lister. So that's why it kind of worked for me. But anyway,
yeah, I still think it's just a limit because they're either from bears or apes. The kind of Tabali are, and it does mention it. I can't remember what one, but they do mention it's when they were having sex when he woke up and actually it looked like it was a bear jumping up and down on top of him. Mm-hmm. But it's implying it's a big, powerful creature. That's the part I just found it didn't make sense to me. But the fact that they extended him as a villain didn't make sense to me either.
No, I would agree with you there.
I thought the way they had actually sent him off was in a hilarious way because you didn't need to kill the villain. You didn't need to do this. You just basically know fine well he's stuck in a marriage that he'll not like. And he's stuck with a powerful thing that's not going to let him get away with anything. Because you can imagine if he got back to the village, everybody to make sure he doesn't go anywhere. He doesn't do this. He doesn't get that. So everybody would be making sure. That's the part I thought they would be making sure, because he's already done a runner once, that he wouldn't get any leeway again, just to actually imply that he caught them off guard straight away.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what I'm saying. So I thought that was a better ending, rather than him coming back just to get the ending that he did get.
So we should probably talk about that. So what happens is they meet up, and basically Rimmer has to confess to Magruder that basically
he's not the ace that he thinks he is.
Yeah.
He basically admits that he isn't. He basically admits all his faults to him.
Yeah.
And he says the bravest thing he ever did was actually telling him how cowardly he is.
Mm-hmm. Now, this is the thing. This is where Magruder actually comes across as a really unlikable, because he like
oh, you're only a third technician, a vending suit repairman. Oh my goodness.
Well, yeah, because it's like, well, the thing is, it feels like he's blaming Rimmer for something that wasn't his fault. Like, it was Magruder made up the lies. It was and that's kind of what seemed a bit.
And Rimmer was actually saying she's made up the lie because she didn't want you to be disappointed because you're never going to see me again, and she wanted other people, not just you, but other people that you didn't actually feel lesser than all these other people who you were going to be meeting in higher ranks, because she managed to get you to go into a good school, to get onto the JMC, to become a Marine. She's the one that's encouraged all that. And if it meant just by making up this father that you could be proud of and want to be like, then she did a great job. It wasn't his fault, but as soon as he found out he was only a third technician, and he was basically almost disgusted. And you're sitting there thinking, well, everything your mum didn't want to happen to you, you're doing. She didn't want you to be ostracized because of who your father was, so she bigged him up. And nobody could say anything different because he's dead. However, as soon as you find out your dad's only a third technician, you're the one that's actually looking down your nose at him. I thought it definitely made him look bad.
I mean, it seemed like he just didn't have the thought or wherewithal to say, well, look, it wasn't his fault, it was my mum. Like, and that's the thing. I do feel like he's a bit of a, I've got to be honest, Magruder's a bit of a, not much of a character, is he? There's not much to him.
He's not. He's basically, he's the MacGuffin to get Rimmer where he needs to be.
Mm-hmm.
That's all he is. He's the MacGuffin. It could have been Magruder, and it would have still got Rimmer to the point he was. Even if Magruder actually had come out, or was just on another ship, and it just so happened that she bumped into them again, and it was a case of, it was only thingy because I found out afterwards you were like this, were like that, and he's trying to prove he wasn't. Or he basically says, well, I am, but that's just me. So it's not my fault you got bumped in the head beforehand. And then he basically goes out in a blaze of glory. So she would have been the MacGuffin. So that's what I'm saying. He could have been anything to get the result that they got at the end.
I thought it was quite in character when there's a scene where Lister jumps them, and Rimmer has a chance to go for the gun on the floor. Like, it's so you got that thought, I'm going to go for this heroic moment. You're expecting him to. Then he goes through the thought process of, oh no, it's going to seem what a predictable thing to do. I'm not going to make it for the gun, and that's kind of when he loses the gumption. And I thought that was quite kind of in character.
Yeah, I thought it was quite good. I liked the idea that he was thinking so much about it.
Yeah,
that it'd taken too long to think, and that Lister just walked up and took on the gun, and you're sitting there thinking, really?
Yeah,
but it was very Rimmer like. He was just questioning himself so much. It's like his exams. He does spend so much time in timetables that he's not got enough time to actually sit the exam.
Yeah, because like you're kind of watching that, you got this image in your head of the facepalm meme with all the from Naked Gun 33 and a third, where you see everyone in the audience just face palms collectively.
Yeah, you could just imagine that. Yeah, and I must admit the way they did it was very Rimmer like.
Yes,
and it's just see the thing is as well. See the audio book. It was read by Craig Charles. He did well, but he definitely doesn't have the range for us, Chris, for doing the characters. He does them well enough that you know who he's meant to be, but you know it's Craig Charles doing it. Whereas when Chris Barry's doing it, you have to think, was that actually Robert Llewellyn, or was that Danny John Jules, or was that Norman Lovett? Or, no, that was actually Chris Barry, because these imitation, these cadence and everything is just spot on. Whereas with Craig, he does the sort of speech patterns, but he's just not got the same cadence and pitch the right. So you know who he's meant to be, but you know it's just Craig Charles doing that. So it's not, considering he's not a voice actor as such, it's not a bad thing. It's just that you can tell the difference between someone who did it for a living than compared to someone who didn't. Because Craig Charles was a street poet.
Yeah.
Whereas Chris Barry did spitting image and did impressions and stuff like that. So he's used to it a bit more. So
it's like he did Ronald Reagan, didn't he? Like like he did that the puppet like would meet Margaret Thatcher, and like then he turned to the camera and go, "Charming woman, him only screwing her country."
Aye, it's spitting image. Yeah, he was really good at that. So he was, and I'm trying to remember who was it. Was that Thingy Brown? It used to do Margaret Thatcher.
I don't know, but I do remember some of the sketches. Like it was like they're having dinner with a cabinet, and like I'll have a croissant and but the special caviar dinner and the vegetables. What about the vegetables?
They'll have the same. Yeah, but spitting image was just iconic at the time. And the good thing is, you imagine a spitting image nowadays, people would get offended by it. Whereas I think Margaret Thatcher's government just thought, all publicity is good publicity, because if people can see us on the TV and laugh at us, and they can see we actually find it funny as well, it's only good for us. Whereas you imagine now, if they had a spitting image, you imagine them going, "Oh, that is disgusting." Imagine talking that, making that woman to look that bad and all this stuff. It would be just too much. People would be offended that they're taking the mickey out of on TV.
Oh no, they did bring spitting image back.
They did, but
they got in trouble with for Greta Thunberg.
Yes, as soon as you make basically, people in the public eye are there to be ridiculed.
Yeah.
As soon as somebody gets into trouble for ridiculing someone who is in the public eye, if they don't want to be in the public eye, they shouldn't. It's the same as, let's see, when people say, "Oh, actors are, he's very doing, he did this, he doesn't like the publicity." Bull. You've got someone who doesn't like the fame. Then why did they become an actor? Why did they aim to be famous? So you can't say you dislike the fame if you go into be a singer, an actor, or whatever, to become popular and well known. You can't say you don't like the fame and like the fame at the same time. So when anybody says that an actor or a musician doesn't like the fame, then they shouldn't have been an actor or a musician, because that's the ultimate goal, to be rich and famous. It's the same as me. If I turn around and says, "I don't like people staring at me," then why would I be on camera? Or at the moment I'm not on camera, but you know what I mean. Why would I be on camera if I didn't like people staring at me? And you can't actually do something and then complain that you don't like doing it. Then don't do it. Simple as that. It's a difference if you're a job of work you don't like, but you need to do that job of work to live. Mm-hmm. You can't class that as acting or musician or whatever, because there's so many other things you could do. If you don't like that type of life, you could do other things. Yes, it's that type of thing. It's so. Where was I going with this?
We're talking about we were talking about, we got onto the topic of, we were talking about Craig
Spitting Image and Craig Charles and Chris Barry. But yes, Craig did a good job considering he's not a voice actor. He did a really good job. So you knew who he was representing when he was doing it. So he would talk very Crichton-like and that type of thing. So you knew who he was talking about. You knew it was Craig Charles just putting on the voice. That's the difference. But considering he's not a voice actor, he did a really good job of reading it, which I was surprised at. Although I'm not surprised that he can read or anything like that, because he's a poet and he used to actually, his poems were really, they were good. The cadence to them, they weren't just a poem the way you would spit. It basically the way he said it as well actually brought the poem to life. So he's a bit of a wordsmith anyway.
Yeah.
And so, but he's still really good considering he put on the actions. It's not just the actual. I've trying to think who is it I like, but I don't like them doing an audiobook. See, Terry Pratchett's had a few audiobooks out. You've had Nigel Planer, you've had Tony Robinson, you've had a few others, but I don't like Nigel Planer reading the Terry Pratchett books because I just don't think he's got the right cadence and voice for it. Whereas I love him when he's been in Young Ones. I loved him when he was in Jonathan Creek and the other bits and pieces he's been in. He's been in a load of stuff that I like, but I don't like him doing audiobooks because I just don't think he's got the right voice for it.
Yeah.
Whereas Tony Robinson, I like him in Time Team, Blackadder, and I loved him when he was reading the Terry Pratchett books.
Yeah.
So it's just that type of thing. But I think I wasn't expecting him to be bad at it, but I didn't expect him to be as good at it.
We probably should talk about the climax of the book.
Yes.
Because now, here's the thing. Do you feel like in the some... I mean, because I know you weren't so keen on... we're both slightly in agreement on Lister the villain.
Yeah. I think you're right. It did actually just get dragged out too long.
Do you think also it kind of became a bit mean-spirited? Because like the scene where he's basically just holding them at gunpoint and he's about to shoot Kachansky, that was kind of...
He's about to shoot Kachansky, and instead of actually just shooting Lister, he basically uses radiation to sterilize him, and just because he thinks that's funny. And you're sitting there thinking, what is the point of that? Except, look how mean I can be, because I'm going to actually threaten to shoot her just because you... But I'm going to sterilize you, but that means I'm going to let you live. So...
It's all about it's about competition. It's showing that he wants to be the best. He wants to kind of he basically is just being Darwinist about I'm the alpha male here, and so basically I'm the only option here, kind of thing.
Yes. However, you're not going to neuter someone and laugh and joke about it if you're going to kill them straight afterwards, because it makes no sense. And I think that's what they seem to be doing with this one, with the Dark Lister. He would do things just because, not because of any other reason, except that.
Like, because with like for instance, the comparison is probably something like Demons and Angels, where like they are just it's really cruel comedy, but it's just comical enough that it's kind of funny, but it's sinister at the same time. But it works. Whereas this just seemed to be just seriously cruel. And
yes,
it just you just see it in your head, and it just looks like it doesn't feel like Red Dwarf.
It didn't. No, it basically just felt as if they were actually just wanting to say, "Look how bad Lister can be."
Yeah,
and I did think it was a wee bit over the top, because same again, there's been bits in this that I just didn't think were Red Dwarf. The killing of the finding the bodies of the cat and all that earlier on. To me, that's not Red Dwarf. It's the same as in the last book as well, where they killed off Rimmer and Crichton just to actually find him again in the next reality, because Rimmer and Crichton just buried the cat and Lister because they couldn't get out of the game, and now they just bumped into them. It's that type of thing. There's wee bits like that just don't seem Red Dwarfish.
No, that worked for me. In backwards that worked for me as a conclusion. It was that
I'd say it didn't really work for me, just for the simple fact is it's a case of we're going to give you emotional by killing these two characters off. Oh, here they're back again. It's that's what I mean. It defeats the emotional impact. Whereas in this one, that doesn't happen, which I loved.
What do you mean? So how do you mean? You mean with Rimmer? Because
smoke me a kipper.
Oh yeah, basically what happens is Rimmer basically he decides to make.
It starts off with Crichton wanting to have a plan. Yeah. Crichton's plan is to take the apocalypse virus. Is it apocalypse? Oblivion or?
Oh no! Before that, it's basically Rimmer and Crichton get locked together in the cell, and Rimmer's beating himself up about the fact that he blew it in terms of not being able to go for the gun. And so Crichton has this idea where he can send his light beam down a tube, and now it might send him to the oxygenation unit where he'll kind of get caught up in the fans, or it might send him to where he needs to go, where he'll be able to get access to weapons. But by luck, he gets the access to weapons. He gets this astro suit where he can it's for mining purposes, but he can actually fly. It's a jetpack with a acetylene torch.
Yeah,
but it's a giant acetylene torch. So basically, with that, he's able to beat Lister, and basically that's how he saves Kachansky's life.
That's how he also saves his son's life.
But in the process, so he has that great moment of triumph, and then evil Lister shoots him right in his light beam, and that's when so it's like he's won, but he's not, because he's.
They think he's dead.
Yeah, I wasn't. Yeah.
No, the way I read it was they went over and the light beam, it was all fizz and so, and it basically went out and it was dead.
Yeah,
and that's why he put it in his pocket.
Well, what I mean is, I feel like if Rim was going to die, I'd rather him die for a better reason than a better foe than the evil Lister, maybe.
Yeah. Oh God, aye. There's so many better ones that they've had, even in the books.
It just leaves you hating that character and just makes you. It just feels like that's the only emotion you get from it. It's just you end up really, really hating a character you already hated.
Yeah.
And basically, two things happen. First of all, they're attacked by the Rage, and because of the way the Rage attacks is it possesses everyone, and they have to form a circle, and one of them has to consume the full force of the Rage, and basically it burns them out completely. And so they form that circle, and it claims evil Lister.
The reason it claims evil Lister is Lister thinks he needs to be lucky, so he takes some of the positive luck virus because that way he'll be lucky enough not to be chosen. But the Rage actually doesn't work like that. The Rage makes everybody angry and they want to be chosen. So luckily for Dark Lister, he was lucky enough to be chosen.
Yeah.
So I like the idea that they took the luck virus and switched it in its head.
Yeah. And then
do you know what I'm actually trying to work out? Remember Kachansky, I don't know if it's just been missed in the audiobook, so you'll be able to answer this because there doesn't seem to be a lot missed out in this one. She took 3 vials. She took a second luck virus. She took, was it a broccoli virus or something like that? And she says, this will save my life at some point. I don't know why. Don't ask me why. But it didn't get mentioned again.
Yeah, I know what you mean. That was a bit odd.
Because I thought that when he leaned forward and got the luck virus and smashed the vial, it was going to be the broccoli one. And that's what saved her life, that he took the wrong one.
Yeah, I was thinking that as well, but
it basically it wasn't. He got the luck virus, and lucky him, he wanted to have the Rage, and he got it. So, but where did the third virus, a viral, come in? It's never mentioned, and there's no plans to be another book. So, It's just weird. It's just a weird one. I wonder if the book actually explains it, and they've just cut that wee bit section out of the audio. It sounds like the last human actually didn't cut out a lot.
No, basically it's just as it's not explained in the book either, in the full book either.
Well, sure. It's basically just it was a what did they bring that up for if they didn't do it? But I digress. We are talking about the rage.
Right. So basically, they know that the rage is going to attack again, and Crichton has the idea that he's going to upload the Oblivion virus into himself so that it will claim him, and then the Oblivion virus will basically, because part of the Gestalt is electrical, because it is basically this electrical.
Yeah, it's an electric storm.
So if it kills the electricity, then it kills the storm, and then once because of that, Crichton, because Rimmer's died, Lister's like, no, you're not doing it. We've already lost Rimmer. We're not going to lose.
And this is where Rimmer hasn't died. He's just so badly injured that his light bee is flashing, and it's actually in Morse code. And the good thing is, it wasn't the Space Marine or the Gyrene or whatever you want to call him that recognised it. It was the communication officer.
Yes.
That's what I like. The fact that it was Kachansky, who's a communication officer. First time it's actually ever used.
Yeah.
The only other time I remember it ever being used is what type of communication? A navigation officer are you? It was a navigation officer, not a communication officer. She's a navigation officer because it was what type of navigation officer of you can't tell your left from your right.
Mm-hmm.
But so I thought she was a communication officer, but it's not. It's navigation. So why she would know? I suppose it's a historical tradition. Navigation, the same as on the sea, you would understand Morse code. But considering Morse code had been out of use today, never mind hundreds of years in the future, I thought I initially thought because she was a communication officer, but I screwed that up, didn't
I? But basically he's saying, well, I'll sacrifice. And it's quite poignant because it's like this is Rimmer's only way of communicating, and he's saying, look, I want to die a hero.
Yeah.
And it's like there is that kind of, so it's poignant in that sense, but it's sad. And so he has it, and his parting message is just he spells out SMAKIBBFB.
Yep. Smoke me a kipper, I'll be back for breakfast.
Yeah, because that's an older. In this book, it's basically revealed to be an old Space Corps saying, and that's so it's not. And
it's not just Ace. It says that, but it basically does say it, or it spells out the initials of it, and everybody sort of goes, "Huh? What's that mean?" And basically, it's his son who says, "Smoke me a big kipper, I'll be back in time for breakfast, or I'll be back for breakfast."
Oh no, it's Lister who knows it. Lister who recognizes it.
I thought no, it was his son, because he was talking to his son. Are you one of these ones that actually say? And he said, "No, that's just good nature ribbing." That's the type of thing he'd say. Was it? I thought it was actually his son he was talking to, but no, it was Lister. It was Lister. He was talking about his son when he actually told him it was his son. Or he's one of these space jocks that say, "Smoke me a kipper." And he said that's just the good nature because they know they could go out to die now. I think so. Yeah, I've obviously picked that wee part up where they were talking and it was coming back as a different person.
So basically, that's how Rimmer kind of goes out, and it's quite a heroic sacrifice.
Yeah,
that bit I liked. I wasn't so keen on the fact that Lister killed him, but the way that he went out.
I thought that Lister should have finished with when he get taken away, and it could have been the Gestalt entity. It's just actually, I thought they were going to kill off the son. So I thought they were going to actually have him raging, and that's.
Do you know something else about this son? I thought it was a bit strange that because the book is called Last Human. But
there's another human, but he's a genetically modified human, so he is.
Yeah, but I mean, it's like it seems like Lister.
There's three of them.
Yeah, exactly. So basically that works and it kills the rage. It releases the minds of the rage,
Uh-huh.
and so then they go down and they basically wait it out in the caves below whilst the planet passes through the.
And then it takes them 3 weeks to dig out. So it's basically the planet's had 3 weeks or more, depending, to start the terraforming.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Lister's in a downer because he's now sterile.
Yeah.
But Kachansky's got the luck virus.
Yep.
So they reckon they're going to be lucky and have many children.
Because there's that scene where they throw the pebbles together in synchronicity, and I think that's implied to be, well, it's not really a sex scene, but it's kind of an intimacy scene because it's almost like they're in sync. They're in kind of they're sharing a moment. They're sharing a so it's almost like that's the impetus for there's going to be, they're going to get lucky. They're going to get lucky.
Yeah. Well, that was the whole emphasis of it, where they taking the luck virus. That the two of them are going to get lucky.
Yeah.
And they've got plenty luck virus to make sure they get lucky in the future.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and that was effectively the end of it, with the two of them walking into the field where the field sort of sways, implying that they're got down to it in the middle of the field. But the fact that Magruder survives, Crichton is... See, I'm still not entirely sure if he's definitely back to being fully mechanic, because it only says taps his chest plate.
No,
it implies he is, but it doesn't actually state in the book. It's just one of those ones that implies he is, but it doesn't say he is. So I suppose it's one of those ones you could take either way.
I think he's supposed to be, but they don't nail it, mis-explaining it. He did mis-explaining the transition back.
Yeah.
Which I thought was a bit... that was a bit of a sloppy job, but I do think it's meant that he's...
I think that's what it was meant when he implies that he's tapped his plate, but it's one of those ones that, well, that doesn't really say he is now mechanical. It basically says that is...
No, it does. But the thing is, when there's a part where Lister asks about the crew, and he says, well, Rimmer's mechanical, and so's Crichton. Because the thing is, Crichton would have to be mechanical to upload the virus, so into himself. So it is pretty unambiguous that he is. It's just they've never.
That's what I'm saying. But because they don't say it, does leave it a wee bit up in the air. It implies very strongly, and it sort of you assume he is. But the problem is when they actually don't tell you or even mention it, and it is up in the air. That's what they say. Like, a good story will leave something ambiguous. A bad story deliberately leaves something that they meant to tell you, but they leave it ambiguous. And I think they meant to tell you, but they forgot, which left it too ambiguous for some, because it didn't imply that. That's the problem. It's not like is Deckard a replicant, because that was, according to Ridley Scott, they actually didn't mean to actually leave it up in the air because they wanted him to be a replicant. But the way the first movie was done, it left it too open that people could interpret it the way they want. So he'd gone back and actually put in the scene with the unicorn to imply he's a replicant, and they even did a voiceover, and then they took the voiceover out, and then it left it more ambiguous again. So the first time they accidentally left it wide open. Second time they tried to actually shut it down and say, no, he is this. And then the third time was they took that out, and it brought it back to a question is, well, we've left it wide open so you can make your own mind up. And that's, I think, the difference between bad, worse, and better, as in accidentally left it ambiguous, deliberately tried to close it and failed, and left it open, but deliberately left it open so it could be ambiguous. Whereas this one, I think they accidentally left it ambiguous, and that's where it fails for me, because it didn't actually say he is definitely back. They just implied it heavily.
Right. Yeah.
And it's I know it's a silly thing to pick on, but if the book had said that after his transmogrification back to an mechanoid, he's decided to do that. They just implied that, and he's going to do this because it could only be a mechanoid that can upload it.
Yeah.
It's that type of thing. So it tells you early on that the two of them would have an issue because they are mechanoid and he's Lightbee. That was before the prison break. So for him to upload it to the Gestalt entity, he had to be a mechanoid, but they left it ambiguous. And that's the problem. It's accidentally ambiguous, which to me is not a very good way of doing it. Because you'll get buggers like me who will take that ambiguity and say, but it doesn't say that. I'm the one that causes you a Deckard's or a replicant or a human argument. And it's only because it's left the ambiguities there. And I quite agree, it had to be mechanical, but the book, unfortunately, doesn't tell you he's mechanical. It sort of implies it without actually telling you, which makes it ambiguous. So you don't know, is he just a third human or fourth human in the ship? Is it all humans in that ship now, as well as the Gelfs? Because you've got a genetically modified human, you've effectively got a transmogrification human, a female and a male humans. So in effect, the last human, minimum there's 2, maximum there's 4, and probably there's actually 3 if you just take a genetic one as well. It might be. Do you see what I mean? It makes it very ambiguous. The title doesn't work. The ending sort of throws it in the air as well, because it is no longer the last human. And it was never the last human because Kachansky was in it. If Kachansky wasn't in it until the end, then the last human would have worked, because it would have been coming from being a last human to now a possibility of having children. It's just one of those things. It's a bummer. It's just, I thought it was just, the end of it was just a wee bit sloppy because of that.
No, I didn't feel that way myself. Although I did feel like maybe Magoo didn't serve much purpose.
It's true. Basically, and I thought, well, can he rebuild the human race with just an Adam and an Eve? They would need others. So is she going to have children with Magruder? Or are they going to have to actually use the machine to actually make a few more females from the Gelfs? Or from some living tissue? Are they going to pick a plant and put it in and get it changed so it's a female? Yeah, I mean, so basically it opens it wide up, and it's doesn't tie it up enough for me, I must admit, which is unfortunate, because I do love Red Dwarf, but I just thought this is of the 4 books, it's definitely the worst of the 4 for me. What about yourself? What did you think of this book and the scheme of the books? Hello. Oh, looks like we've lost Sadako as he got a sound issue. Anyway, I'll continue on. The books, definitely the first 2 books, to me, they're a single entity. There's 2 books, The Infinity Welcomes Careful Drivers and Better Than Life. The 2 of them are actually written as 2 parts of the same story. I would definitely say those 2 together are the best 2 of the books. Backwards and The Last Human were written separately to be a continuation on from Backwards. Better Than Life. Of the 2, Backwards was the better book. And we've got Sadako back on. Hi, did you get kicked off there?
Something happened. Yeah, the internet just died for a minute. I wonder how. Sorry. So where did I cut out?
I didn't hear anything after my wee bit of a tirade.
Oh, okay. Right. I was going to give my summary.
Yes, I basically did my summary, and I said I got to you, and there was silence.
Right. Well, I would say that like I know I've nitpicked this book a lot, but I do think I think there's some good ideas in there. Some very good ideas in there. I think.
I think I can't say any of the 4 books didn't have good parts to each of them.
Yeah.
Definitely, each of the books had good ideas in them all. Some of them, they had clever points to them. Even in The Last Human, there was some parts I thought were very cleverly done.
Yeah.
But what was your make in comparison to the other 3?
It fell short compared to the other 3, I feel.
And
it was slightly patchy, and I feel like patchy in a way that meant that it didn't quite have the full impact it should have emotionally.
Yeah, I do agree with that, because any of the parts that they could have actually drawn out the emotion, I felt as if it was off-screened it, as it were. So
well, not so much that, there were certain elements that kind of soured it for me.
Yeah, there was. Well, I understand that, because there was parts like that, but as what I was saying just before when you got cut off, is from the 4 books, this is my least favourite of the 4. Books 1 and 2, I think you have to read together. They are 2 parts of the same story.
Yeah.
You can read either of them as an individual, but because they follow on, I think it actually is a better all-round story. So Infinity Welcomes Careful Drivers and Better Than Life, I would treat as 2 parts of the same book. Yeah. So I would definitely class them as the best 2. I would put Better Than Life slightly ahead of the Infinity.
Mm-hmm.
But the 2 of them are the best. Backwards is definitely better than The Last Human. It's more Red Dwarf-like for me. It's because of the humour is there. Whereas this one, although there is some parts that have got the humour, I think it's very dark and nihilistic at points. It takes it away from... takes it further away from the Red Dwarf universe.
I think Red Backwards is the most satisfying of the 3, and this is not quite satisfying. It feels like there's the building blocks of something that should be satisfying, but it doesn't quite. There's the building blocks are there for it to be a satisfying book, but it kind of, I don't know, something about it. So I mean, okay.
Yeah, I do agree. It's not the greatest book, but it has got an interesting read to it. No matter what, if you want a good Red Dwarf book, I would definitely go with the first 2.
Yeah.
You've only got 1 book to read, what 1 book of the 4 would you recommend?
Backwards.
See, I would put Infinity, Better Than Life.
All right.
So I would, although I still say you can't really split those 2 books up, because one starts and ends. It's one of those ones that Infinity ends and Better Than Life starts almost as a literally continuation. It's the points in it are just so together.
It's like Kill Bill Part 1 and 2 in a way.
Yes, it is. You could watch either of them, but there would be some things you wouldn't quite understand because there is slight difference. There are bits missing. But I would definitely, if I had a choice of single books, probably Better Than Life.
Yeah.
But books 1 and 2 are read them as one, then the Backwards is be the next one. If you wanted to continue on, yes, Last Human, but it's definitely not the best of the 4. It's to me, it's the worst of the 4.
It's the Backwards for me is my preferred conclusion to the series. I feel like
if I had only to read the first 2 and one of these 2 other books, Last Human definitely wouldn't be it.
I think that's it. I think if I was disappointed the first time I read it, because I thought, well, the first time I read it, this was the only follow-on there was. And so I thought that was going to be, well, I don't know. I kind of preferred it where it was before. Whereas backwards is kind of, well, this I like a lot more as a follow-on.
Yeah. See, I read backwards first and I read this one. And the only thing I liked about this one was the expansion on the Guelphs. And I remembered the parts of that. Obviously, I'd forgotten a lot more of what happened, like Magruder turning up and stuff like that. And I think it was just because the rest of the book, apart from when the Guelphs were expanded on, was sort of meh. And that's probably the best I could say about the story behind this. Apart from the one or two good bits in it, I thought the whole story was meh. And I do like the Guelph stuff.
For me, I thought it was more, there was ambitious, but it fell short. Well, I wouldn't say it was, more than meh.
Aye. So there you go, ladies and gents. Our review of the very last Red Dwarf book. And 13 seasons, 4 books. Mm-hmm. And that's us come to an end. And I must admit, no matter how much I've moaned and complained and picked and bits, I loved doing all the watches and the reviews and the books and everything. Yes, I was doing audiobooks, so I was sort of cheating. And it doesn't look like Last Human had any changes. And if you've got a choice between an audiobook and a book of backwards, go with the book, not the audible book, because there's too much missing. Mm-hmm. The Gunman of the Apocalypse part, definitely, you don't want to miss. So Audible is great, or Audible, not Audible. Audible's the channel which I subscribe to. But Audible is great, but you will get an abridged version, and you want unabridged, go for the book, the hard copy.
Yeah.
Paperback or hardback makes no difference. Go for the hard copy.
Hardback.
Hardback's always better, because you've seen my Wheel of Time paperback compared to my hardbacks. The paperbacks are falling apart. Hardbacks are still solid because of the way they're bound. But next week, I'm going to do a review of the Talings of Wing Chang. Mm-hmm. Doctor Who 100 subscribers review 100 subscribers review stream. And what I'll be doing the week after that, for that 1 week, any videos you put in a hashtag Talings, and then I'll put you in a draw, and I've got a copy of Talings of Wing Chang, and that'll be a giveaway for my 100 subscriber stream. Mm-hmm. I need to watch that subscriber stream. See, it keeps on thinking I've got a lisp every time I say it.
It's a bit Sean Connery there.
Yes, Miss Moneypenny. or Sean Canary, as Elaine C. Smith used to do Lorraine Kelly, and she used to interview Sean Canary, so she would actually pronounce it as it's spelled, Sean Canary. And so she basically, Elaine C. Smith was on Ramsay Nisbet, so she's a Scottish actress, comedian. And she used to do her impression of Lorraine Kelly, who is a Scottish presenter as well. And it's used to, and we're going to have an interview with the Sean Canary. Mm-hmm. And it's just every time she's doing it, he would come in and correct her, and I'm trying to remember who it was. It wasn't the thing with Docherty, it wasn't the guy Docherty used to do it. I can't remember who used to do the Sean Canary side of the interview, but it was hilariously funny, and it's more of a naked video type comedy sketch show, so it was. So anyway, so I'm going to do a giveaway for the week, and thank you very much, Sadaku, and I'll see you next week for the review for Doctor Who.
See you next week.
Definitely. But remember, lads and lassies, I've got a Saturday stream, Let's Talk Geeky. So join us then, 9 o'clock Saturday UK time, and I'll see you later. And remember, guys, I'm not old, I'm classic. PJ Maybe out.
Thanks, Megan.
I'm going to play this, my outro.